This December 1st, 2022 regular meeting of the Fairfax County School Board will now
Diciembre
come to
1,
order.
2020.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, a moment of silence, and a performance of the national anthem by the Island Creek Elementary School 5th and 6th grade chorus under the direction of Sarah Laird and Deb Tien.
Thank you, parents of Island Creek Elementary. We're so happy to have your kids here. We appreciate you and them.
And they were amazing. Yay. Agenda item 2.02, certification of closed meeting compliance. In order to comply with section 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia, it is necessary for the board to certify that since the Fairfax County School Board convenes a closed meeting on December 1st, 2022, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board during the closed meeting. Do you have a motion? Ms. Omesh, do you have a second? Ms. Derenak Koufax, all those in favor? That is Ms. Pekarsky, Ms. Cohen, Mr. Frisch, Dr. Anderson, Ms. McLaughlin, Ms. Derenak Koufax, Ms. Keys-Gamarra, Ms. Omesh, Ms. Tolan, and myself. All those opposed? All those abstaining? Ms. Marin, that motion passes with Ms. Corbett-Sanders away from the table. Agenda item 2.03, announcements. If you would like a copy, if you'd like to review a copy of the agenda and any agenda item that is being discussed tonight, that information may be found at the back of the auditorium or on the website at fcps.edu/schoolboard/board docs. Tonight's meeting is being broadcast on Channel 99 and live streamed on the website at fcps.edu/tv/channel 99. Ms. Corbett-Sanders is absent this evening. Item 6.02, fiscal year 23 mid-year budget review has been rescheduled for the December 15th meeting. Item 6.05, school board liaison and committee assignments will be rescheduled for a future meeting. I call on Ms. Togby for an announcement.
Human Rights Day is observed every year on December 10th, the day the United Nations General Assembly adopted in 1948 the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This year, Human Rights Day marked the 74th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a milestone document that proclaimed that inalienable rights which everyone is entitled to as a human being, regardless of race, color, religion, sex, language, political, or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. It is the most translated document in the world and available in more than 500 languages. Drafted by representatives of diverse legal and cultural backgrounds from all regions of the world, the Declaration sets out universal values and a common standard of achievement for all people of all nations. It establishes the equal dignity and worth of every person. Thanks to the Declaration, the states' commitment to its principles, the dignity of millions has been uplifted, and the foundation for a more just world has been laid. While its promise is yet to be realized, the very fact that it has stood the test of time is testament to the enduring universality of its perennial values of equality, justice, and human dignity. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights empower us all. The principles enshrined in the Declaration are as relevant today as they were in 1948. We need to stand up for our own rights and those of others. We can take action in our own daily lives to uphold the rights that protect us all and thereby promote the kinship of all human beings.
Thank you. Agenda item 2.04, National Inclusive School Weeks Resolution. The board will invite each recognition recipient to the dais for a photo after the reading of all recognitions. I call on Ms. McLaughlin for the resolution.
Thank you, Chair. Whereas since its inception in 2001, National Inclusive Schools Week has celebrated the progress that schools have made in providing a supportive and quality education to an increasingly diverse student population, including students who are marginalized due to disability, gender, socioeconomic status, cultural heritage, language preference, and other factors. And whereas Inclusive Schools Week is an annual event sponsored by the Inclusive Schools Network and is held during the first full week of December, and whereas this year's theme, Unity within Community, Inclusion around the world, United we are stronger, to focus on our common need, inclusive practices in our schools and in our communities. And whereas to ensure that our children belong, thrive, and feel supported by their teachers, peers, family members, and neighbors, we must continue to learn more about the work of other organizations and groups in our community and share ideas, resources, and support. And whereas we must teach our children by our actions how to treat others, how to communicate and build relationship, and how to work in harmony to address our common needs. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Fairfax County School Board reminds the entire FCPS community that education takes on a beautiful shape when all children are included. I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Pekarsky. Ms. McLaughlin, would you like to speak to your resolution?
Thank you. Just briefly, I want to say it was an honor to read this evening's resolution. As a social worker, I just feel very passionately about how we recognize that each and every one of us walk this earth coming with our own individual stories, our own individual experiences, and our beliefs and our love and our value of things on this earth. And we live in complicated times, and I think we've sometimes fallen away from understanding that the complexity of our world by our backgrounds and circumstances actually makes us a more dynamic world. And so I just can't think of a better way for this board, where I know our dedication has been for inclusion, to give voice and elevate this. And so I hope everyone sees this as a celebration of what we strive to be every day here in Fairfax County Schools.
Thank you. Ms. Pekarsky, would you like to speak to your second?
Yeah, sure, just briefly. I too am honored to bring this resolution forward. I think the greatest gift that we can impart on our children through our schools is the gift of learning how to work together, how to understand each other, how to have compassion for our differences, how to have empathy for others that are unlike you, and the fact that at the end of the day we have much more in common with each other than we have a difference from each other. So I know we all really aspire for FCPS to be a place where every single child is seen and is understood and is really respected for who they are. And, you know, I think there are challenges, and there are still many ways and many places where not all of our kids feel this way every day, but it continues to be a focus, and I think it is a lofty goal. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Marin?
Yes, there's no question that the board supports numerous facets of what's needed to provide students with an excellent education. And this evening, we highlight another worthy, necessary component, which is to spotlight the need for inclusive schools for each child. I do want to share that I'm eager for the school board's governance committee, of which I'm a member, to review the topics that the board brings before the public as resolutions and the process for determining those topics. I am eager to contribute to policy and budgetary work that embodies the essence of these resolutions. Thank you.
Ms. Tolan?
Thank you. I just wanted to mention a couple of incredible examples of this work across the district. I reached out to my advisory committee for students with disabilities representative to ask her about the specific work that they're doing this year. And they're looking at our public day programs to the extent to see where these sites make school accessible to even those with some of our most severe learning disabilities. And we heard during our report from our ACSD this week that many of these day schools are nationally renowned. They are looking at assistive technology service referrals and how that is equitable across schools. And they're looking at how honors coursework in the later grades can be accessed by students with IEPs. And those are just a few examples. In addition, I'm super excited to attend Kent Garden's International Night. I know many of our schools have international nights to really celebrate the school community's cultures through foods, crafts, parades, et cetera, because we do understand that our diversity is really our strength. I also want to remind everyone that we do have family liaisons now at every one of our schools to help make sure that we are including all of our families. And those are just a few examples.
Ms. Keys-Gamarra?
Yes, I just really wanted to use this as an opportunity to celebrate the diversity of our schools. We speak about 200 languages. We have people from all over the world. We have different cultures within the United States, and when we come together in our schools, it's a wonderful melting pot where learning can occur in a unique environment. And so I am just really grateful for that. I've also had an opportunity to visit some of our schools where we're specifically focusing on special education services and talked with groups regarding making sure we have what we need so that students that speak different languages can really benefit. So it's really an exciting time, and I want to applaud our staff members. We have amazing professionals in our schools that are working hard to make sure that every student can benefit from our educational process. And it's just joyful to think about not just what we've achieved, but what we can achieve as we continue to work together. So thank you.
Thank you. And seeing no other board member who wants to speak, I'm just going to take my turn briefly on this. As many of my colleagues know, and people, this is very, very personal for me, National Inclusive Schools Week, and I'm really thrilled to see it expanding from where it originally started, which was inclusion around students with disabilities, to really inclusion of everybody in learning to work and live and accept and love one another and really recognize the value in each other and learning how to work with each other, because inclusion is beyond disability, it's everybody. So I'm thrilled to see that, but I would be remiss to not talk about where this started. And it did start with Inclusive Schools Week to celebrate inclusive efforts for students with disabilities, who still tend to be some of the groups that are the most separated in our school system. And one of the great programs that many schools have and some still do is called Walk in Our Shoes. And it's a program often the PTA runs where students go through a series of stations to feel a little bit what it might be like to be a student with a disability, with a mobility issue, with a language issue, with sensory issues. And it really helps build that empathy amongst our students. I would be remiss if I didn't mention how much, for me as a parent, my own son's inclusion because of his strength has meant to his students around him. And over the years, I've had students tell me stories like, I didn't think a kid like that could do this. I'll never think that again. I didn't think a kid like that could make me a better person. I'll never think that again. I want to be a music therapist because a kid like that is amazing. And the reality is, when we are included with each other, when we look at each other for what we bring of value and strength to the table, when we're given that space to do so, not told to do so because you should, but given a space to authentically work, be, play, relax together, where we just get to know each other, where people who aren't seen for strengths have a chance to have their strengths shine, that's when we become the best world that we can be. And so I'm really thrilled to celebrate this. I'll stop talking now because I could talk about this for hours. So having said that, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. That is Ms. Keys-Gamarra, Ms. Marin, Ms. Amesh, Ms. Tolan, Ms. Derenak-Kofax, Ms. McLaughlin, Dr. Anderson, Mr. Frisch, Ms. Cohen, Ms. Pekarsky, and myself. That motion, and any abstaining, absence, that motion passes with Ms. Corbett Sanders away from the table. Agenda item 2.05, Computer Science Month recognition. I call on Ms. Cohen for the recognition.
Thank you. I know it's a little unorthodox, but we have some really special VIPs in the audience today. So I just wanted to recognize them before I read this recognition because they were the inspiration for doing it. Will the gems of Braddock Elementary School stand up, please? Hi, guys. Thank you so much for coming. I know we have an honorary gem, too, who's a middle schooler. I don't want to... Thank you all so much. And with them is Miss Joyce Matthews, who is the inspiration behind so many of the STEAM programs throughout FCPS and lots of other places, and was the first person who really taught and showed me everything that not just you ladies can do, but that all of our kids can do if given the opportunity and the access and materials. And you guys are amazing. And I see Ms. Jackson Muir, the principal, is back there too. Hello. In fact, if you're a STEAM educator, do you mind standing up for us? Thank you so much. And I want to take the opportunity to thank Ms. Alex Fuentes, who helped me write this. She's the FCPS Program Manager for STEAM and Computer Science. So thank you so much, Alex. So to that end, the week of December 5th through 11th, 2022 is recognized as National Computer Science Education Week. Schools across the nation will participate in numerous activities to promote computer science in the pre-K learning environment. In Fairfax County Public Schools, students will participate in computer science learning experiences like the Hour of Code to inspire interest and excitement for continued computer science learning. The Commonwealth of Virginia was one of the first to pass legislation to support schools with integrating computer science curricula. In FCPS, the Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Mathematics, STEAM, department provides our schools with resources and training to support the integration of computer science in pre-K through 12 classrooms. Our students go beyond coding and programming by applying computational thinking to solve problems with or without technology. They use Portrait of a Graduate attributes, content knowledge, and computer science and engineering practices to become creators of technology, and they investigate real-world problems, design innovation solutions, and prepare for future careers. Modern employers seek knowledgeable, skilled, and innovative graduates equipped to enter the ever-growing digital age. Computer science and STEAM are important for all students in Fairfax County Public Schools. Students engage in computer science as creators, explorers, and innovators and learn their ideas matter. They see themselves as belonging in computer science careers and build a strong foundation for the needs and demands of tomorrow's workforce. The school board recognizes December 5th through 11th, 2022 as National Computer Science Education Week to raise awareness about the benefits of computer science education and exploration, and to celebrate students, just like the gyms, and staff alike who embrace computer science learning in Fairfax County Public Schools.
Thank you. Ms. McLaughlin, actually, Ms. Cohen, would you like to speak? Good, thank you. Ms. McLaughlin?
Yes, thank you. I do want to say that it is remarkable how FCPS is really trying to grow computer science and STEM education for our students. Having had 3 children come through the public schools, certainly what I found is almost earlier in our education, we really weren't getting there for the students. And so we were hearing that students were going to college before they were really having that exposure to careers and fields that employees around the nation are trying to find. And we were actually bringing people from around the globe when we had so many amazing college graduates right here, but just weren't being trained in these high demand fields. And we've also found that there is a work pathway that isn't always requiring to go into 4 years of college debt to also have really rewarding careers in computer science and STEAM. So to that end, I do want to do something that's a little unique. We don't normally give an opportunity for our community stakeholders to give a special message, but I've been given this opportunity to share with all of you that on behalf of the students, staff, families, PTA board, community, and the business partners who support the extreme programs at Braddock Elementary, they would like to extend a deep thank you to the Fairfax County School Board members, the FCPS leadership team and superintendent for taking the time to acknowledge the importance of STEAM and computer science programs, events, and activities in all of Fairfax County Public Schools. We appreciate your thank you, and it's wonderful to have you here with us tonight. Keep up the fantastic work, everybody.
Ms. Tolan?
Thank you. Yes, as someone that since college has been trying to promote women in STEM careers, that's just a few years. I was thrilled to meet our GEMs through my work in FCPS and many of our STEAM teachers, and just always amazed with the incredible work that they've been doing. Many of our schools will be taking part in the Hour of Code this month or next. And I want to encourage our parents to sit down with your student and hop on code.org. You can participate as well and learn how to play poem art or dance party. And you might be amazed at how quickly your students catch on faster than you do. But anyway, give it a try. All jobs of the future and ones that are not yet to be invented, as Dr. Reed often reminds us, will rely on a deeper knowledge of coding and computers, and so it's important that we promote this. I did find out from in a presentation that I had with my PTA leaders just yesterday with our FCPS manager of tutor.com that some of our students are so motivated in computer science that they are logging into tutor.com over and over to learn Java and Python. So Mr. Sethi, you may want to get those names to support your development of a pipeline for a technology organization.
Great, thank you. I would like to invite all of those here in support of Computer Science Month recognition to please join the board for a photo at the dais. And ask my colleagues to remain in front of the dais for the next photo. Come on up, Braddock.
I would like to invite everyone here in support of the National Inclusive Schools Week recognition to please join the board for a photo.
Agenda item 3.01, community participation. The next order of business is community participation. Speakers must limit their remarks to no more than 2 minutes in length. At the conclusion of 2 minutes, the microphone and video will be turned off. School board members will be listening but not responding to individual speakers. The school board will not hear statements involving issues that have been scheduled for public hearings, such as the capital improvement program, budget, and boundaries. Comments targeting, criticizing, or attacking individual students are not permitted during public meetings. Complaints regarding school-based employees should be directed to the appropriate school principal or other school officials. Speakers should refrain from using personally identifiable information in connection with an individual student or school-based employee. Additionally, speakers should be respectful and observe proper decorum in their statements, avoiding profanity, inappropriate gestures, shouting, and comments that run counter to the spirit and letter of the school division's non-discrimination policy. All statements should be directed to the school board, and speakers should remain at the podium until concluding their remarks. As a reminder, speaker substitutions are not permitted. A speaker may not yield their time to another individual before or during their remarks. Shouting and outbursts from the audience will not be tolerated. We are grateful for those who have come to speak to us today, and thank you for your cooperation.
Our first speaker is Jonathan Randall.
Hello. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Jonathan Randall, and I was a teacher resident. I come to you today to address an oversight with the teacher resident position in FCPS and how its treatment fundamentally undermines the entire culture of FCPS and the spirit in which the position was created. It was clear from the start my administration had no idea what to do with a teacher resident, as it was a very new position and there wasn't a lot of answers. There was no regular meetings or observations with admin. I did not feel like I had a supportive and growth-focused environment. For a long time, I didn't even have a mentor. I arrived early, stayed late, and combed through the VDOE resources and prayed to the good book of the Pacing Guide daily. I had no previous indication when my evaluation came up that I was going to be terminated. Regulation 4429.4 states the dismissal of an employee constitutes the most severe type of disciplinary action authorized under this regulation. What did I do that constituted the most severe type of disciplinary action? And I quote, lack of student engagement, and failure to effectively manage student behavior, end quote, in my first quarter as a teacher resident. I was even condemned for admitting areas I needed improvement in during my evaluation. As a substitute, I had more rights and protections than a teacher resident. I was told a teacher resident is considered an operational employee which can be fired for any reason within their first year. In a learning position that relies heavily on supporting and learning, that makes you sign a 12-month work contract, you have no respect or protection. There's no opportunity for feedback or change, no warnings. A teacher resident can only succeed through continued learning and is directly at risk for termination based on the willingness of admin to embrace professional growth.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mark Spooner.
I often criticize this board, but tonight I'd like to give credit where I think it's due. At a meeting in October, a board member moved to put a new item on the agenda at the last minute. It would have committed the board to implement, quote, anti-racist, equity-based, and justice-based instruction. These are all the buzzwords for a divisive, race-based victimhood curriculum. 4 board members had no qualms about trying to ram this through, but a majority of you rejected it, and for that, I think you deserve the community's thanks. The question, though, is whether this was a sign of new moderation. The pressure from the left is going to continue. In fact, practically the next item on your agenda, not tonight, but soon, is a proposal to throw boys and girls together in the same sex ed classes. The girls haven't asked for this, nor have the boys, nor have their parents, nor is there any evidence that the existing system hasn't worked well. This is being proposed because the transgenders community has chosen it as their next issue du jour. After all, there might be a student or two who might not want to choose which class to attend, so let's just throw them all together. To them, the interests of the other kids don't matter, the parents don't matter, common sense doesn't matter, and common decency doesn't matter. This seems outrageous, but how will you vote? And after you vote on that fringe proposal, what about the next one? Moving into 2023, the eyes of the community will be on this board as never before. I urge you to focus on the ABCs of education rather than ideology. But for tonight, I want to thank you for doing the right thing in October.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tyrone Santos.
So I can't believe that this board thinks a book like Lawn Boy is okay in our school libraries. Our kids shouldn't be reading about pedophilia. So get the porn and the pedo crap out of our school libraries, please. On October 6th, I heard you, Ms. Amesh, trample over free speech like it was nothing. The government, which is all of you, okay, isn't allowed to compel speech in this country. We don't even compel kids to say the Pledge of the Allegiance. But then you turn around and compel people to speak made-up pronouns. So please go open up a history book, because what comes after the government compels speech is what is the worst of what humanity has to offer. Dr. Reed, a couple nights ago, I asked you, you told me students have the right to use facilities consistent with their gender identity. Like, I don't really know what planet you guys are on, because boys and girls are different, biology matters, and removing the words boys and girls from the curriculum doesn't stop boys and girls from existing. Combining them into the same sex ed class doesn't stop them from being different. Women-only spaces have been safeguarded for generations as far as I know. And like, this estrogen-packed board needs to get real and stand up for the girls you're responsible for. You're forcing people to speak lies to children. You're keeping secrets from parents. You can't even answer this ridiculous question on my t-shirt. Okay, how are parents supposed to feel good about sending our kids to you for 7 hours a day? That's it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Samantha Phelps.
Howdy and good evening. Thank you for having me this evening. I'm here to talk to you about Regulation 4760.9 concerning the short-term disability policy for employees. It states that sick employees must use their accrued leave and annual leave for the first 20 work days of an illness or injury. If the employee does not have accrued leave equal to the number of days absent from work, the employee will be placed in a leave without pay status, which will count towards their elimination period. This equates to 140 hours of lost leave or pay. By comparison, the elimination period required by almost every surrounding school division is no more than 7 days. Additionally, Fairfax County employees themselves have no elimination period. What this actually means for an FCPS employee like myself: an employee would have to not take off a single day for a medical or personal reason for the first 2 years of their employment to have enough leave to be able to afford the elimination period. This is my 6th year in FCPS, and I only have 170 hours, approximately 24 days, which would mean I would have only a total of 4 days left for the remainder of the year in case my child, due in January, husband, or myself becomes ill. After that, I would have to use leave without pay. Additionally, that I would have to wait an additional 2 years without taking any time off for any reason to have another child if I so choose. What this really meant for me was when I lost my first pregnancy in January of this year, I took only 1 day to mourn my loss and seek medical help. When I lost my second pregnancy in April, instead of focusing on yet another loss, I found myself grateful that it occurred at the start of spring break so that I could take more than 1 day off to mourn my loss.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Laura Hanford.
I'm asking you to oppose FLECAC recommendations on 5 grounds. First, they're unlawful. Virginia guidelines require teaching such topics in sex-separate classes and require schools to abide by content parameters which exclude gender ideology from elementary grades. Secondly, the recommendations are drawn not from science, but from the activist materials of Gender Spectrum, per Appendix A. The author is an attorney who travels the U.S. training schools to conceal gender transition from parents and assisting judges in taking children away from parents because of their views on gender. That alone is disqualifying. The recommendations deny science and the irreversible harm done to children who alter their bodies to match their feelings. There are no long-term studies, none, that prove the benefits of gender affirmation in children or that it prevents suicide. European nations have comprehensively reviewed the evidence and found it so weak and the risks so high that they have sharply curtailed the instant gender affirmation in children that FLECAC is pushing. Gender dysphoria typically resolves, and as France states, there is no test to distinguish permanent dysphoria from a transient phase. England now classifies social transition as an active intervention, not a neutral act. World expert Dr. Zecker warns it actually dramatically increases the likely consequences of lifelong biomedical treatments. Which leads to my 4th point. There is a $1 billion gender industry preying on our children, and it begins with teaching gender ideology. The recommendations push children right into that school-to-clinic pipeline. Teaching gender ideology to kids is opposed by doctors, researchers, therapists, all kinds of people in your communities, including most Fairfax County parents and faith communities. Teach kindness for all, but don't harm kids under the guise of inclusiveness. These recommendations are unlawful, anti-science, and anti-family. Vote no.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kathleen Gillette.
Hi, good evening. Kathleen Gillette Mallard also, but I identify as an eagle, not a mallard duck. Okay. Good evening. Many speakers tonight are extremely concerned about the proposed changes to the family life education, also known as sex ed, but in my opinion, it should also be known as how to confuse, traumatize, sexualize, groom our students at a younger and younger age. I ask you, do we need to come back here week after week, month after month, year after year to ask you to please get back to the basics of education? It seems like your social engineering issues are never ending. Why are you working so hard on issues which have nothing to do with academic preparation of our youth to become productive, skilled members of the workforce? Over the years, you've taken on so much more than reading, writing, and arithmetic. Yeah, we want to have safe schools. Yes, we want to have our kids learn skills. Yes, some of our kids need extra help. But you have determined, some teachers have determined their role is to create a utopian Orwellian world where students are told to question their gender, question their reality. Now, the real issue I'm here tonight is why don't you all go back and look at your resolution in January about human trafficking? You are missing students. You did not use the money that was intended to track those students down. Where are they? 750, mainly Latino students, and there's a person here tonight who's been tracking that. Human traffickers are known to target not only middle, high school. Every Fairfax County public schools has had a human trafficking incident. Go to Tyson's Corner Mall. You can see it. It's there. I met a young lady who was from Fairfax County Public Schools. She met a guy. He groomed her. She was already groomed partially. Anyway, let's all, do our, well, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Cole Mallard.
Good evening. As already been stated, the Fairfax County School Board is considering the Family Life Education Curriculum Advisory Committee's 2022 recommendations to its FLE curriculum, which include ending separate sex ed instruction, replacing the terms boy and girl with assigned female and male at birth, teaching sex is not binary, and pushing radical gender ideology in elementary grades. These radical changes violate the modesty and innocence of our young students, as well as undermine family values regarding sex and sexuality. The recommendation to explore instruction of gender identity in elementary school and create a more quote-unquote inclusive FLE curriculum overall, unquote, blatantly ignores science-based approaches to teaching family life and sex education. These changes seek to expand in an extreme way state-level guidelines for family life education, which don't even prescribe gender topics for elementary grades. The recommended changes allow schools to adopt gender-combined sex education or human growth and development lessons as early as 4th grade. Throughout the FLE Advisory Committee annual recommendations, document references are made to Gender Spectrum, an advocacy group that partners with Planned Parenthood, originally called the Negro Project, in addition to some of the largest and wealthiest LGBTQ activist groups, such as GLSEN, Glenson I suppose it's pronounced, and the Human Rights Campaign. Please consider these changes. Reconsider them, please. Our children and grandchildren deserve protection from these efforts to groom them. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mark Smith.
Hi, I'm Mark Smith. I'm relatively new to Fairfax. This is my second time speaking before the board, but it's nice to see you all this evening. There are two things I want to talk about before I get to the little notes that I wrote. First, the elementary school kids doing computer science thing. I had no idea that that was a thing. 10 out of 10, big fan. So thank you for that. Also, the leave policy thing. Please fix whatever that is. I would appreciate it. I'm here to talk about the teacher pay steps. that teachers didn't get after COVID. That if a teacher's first year of teaching was the year we locked down that spring, that the next school year they did not receive a pay step, and then the last year they did not receive a pay step. So it's my understanding they got a pay step this year. And that what that means is that a teacher this is their 4th year of teaching is being paid the same as a teacher who is their 2nd year of teaching. And that paying the teachers of this county is showing them both their value to us as a community and to you. That is how that you compensate them. And I would want you to give them those 2 steps back. They deserved it, they earned it, they worked hard during that time. Whether it was teaching digitally or doing distance learning, that was hard to do. Those weren't regular school years. And not getting steps for that is not great. I know you guys have had $2,000 bonuses that have been distributed to the teachers, but that's not the same as a pay step. That doesn't equate to what you deal with retirement when down the road, or people close to retirement, whether it's 5, 10, 15, or 20 years down the road. I know that's not a problem that you can fix probably right now because Fairfax County is enormous and you have a multi-million-dollar budget, and so I don't expect anything to happen like quickly because that'd be nuts. But I would like you to do something about it, or at least look at it, or do it 5 years down the road. That's fine, but I think it does need to be addressed because I think they deserve those steps. Thank you very much and have a good night.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Karen Solon.
Hi. My name's Karen Solon. I am proud to add my one voice to the many that you've heard in support of the changes to the FLE curriculum that better respects our LGBTQ students and their families. I've been a resident of Fairfax County for 50 years. Fairfax County schools have educated my own 2 children, their friends, and innumerable children I have taught as a child care provider and preschool teacher. I care very deeply about children, and I know that what we teach them matters. Growing up in the 50s, I was left to absorb many negative attitudes and prejudices of the day, which I did, and I was left to educate myself as an adult about the complexity of gender, which I have done with the help of many, many faces that are all, I'm speaking for them today. We do assign gender at birth, and we do not always get it right, period. Cultures vary in how they treat transgender people and non-binary people, but they have always existed. And from birth through childhood and throughout their lives, they deserve the same respect and dignity and love and protection that is the birthright of every child and each of us. As adults, they are our neighbors, our friends, colleagues, ministers, architects, EMTs, nurses, other healthcare workers, and more. They live among us. Many people here are not aware. I am, because I know them. I am sure that among those who oppose the changes are parents and others motivated by a genuine love and genuine concern for children. I suspect there are others whose motives are based on unfounded fears of these people or on deep-seated prejudices, perhaps. I don't like to assume that. But regardless of their motives, I ask you this question: who will stand with the vulnerable young person who...
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Jessica Dalyusong.
Esteemed members of the board, I am actually not sure if this is the right platform, and I am very sorry if it's not, but I'm super passionate about what I'm about to talk about, and I signed up and got accepted, so here I am, and we're gonna have a lot of fun. I'm here to talk about an opportunity to add an option for high school students who do not want to go to college or who want to earn enough to support themselves through college. Or anybody who wants to support themselves part-time, any students looking for a stepping stone into industries like business or healthcare. And not only is the projected job growth look at 22%, but the available job to available practitioner rate is 2 to 1. So ladies and gentlemen of the board, my name is Jessica DeLusong, a widowed single mother of 4 and a licensed massage therapist of over 10 years with the state of Virginia. And I have a whole presentation full of logical reasons why the students of Fairfax County Schools would benefit from learning about a career in massage therapy and hopefully one day implementing it as part of Fairfax Academy. I think it would help the county greatly, the people, and lots of local businesses. Furthermore, I'm from here, and I know for a fact that Fairfax County leads the state and kind of by default the world, a nation, in education. So I think it's time to lead the nation and be the first country to educate students about the oldest healing art in the world that has survived the industrial and internet revolutions and the '08 housing crash, and because, you know, everybody loves their massage therapist. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Nick Matich.
Thank you. I'd like to address you about the proposed changes to the FLE curriculum and the proposed mixing of boys and girls in grades 4 through 8 when they're covering very sensitive topics about body development, puberty. It makes no sense. What's the rationale for this change? I can't figure it out because no one's asking for it, like a previous speaker said. Children at that age are trying to understand their own bodies, and many of them are embarrassed. And having the opposite sex in the room with them will stifle discussion, will cause embarrassment, and will hinder open questions on these very, very important topics. So this change of mixed gender instructions makes no sense at all. And the second, your misguided use of inclusive language, of assigned at birth, of gender assigned at birth, it's not inclusive, it's abusive. It's anti-science. Sex and gender are not assigned at birth. They're determined at conception, at the genetic and chromosomal level. That can never be changed. And this proposed language will just confuse very young children as to gender, because many children will go through phases where they are confused. And to affirm that confusion will create much bigger problems long later. It will confuse them on biology. Those who suffer from that terrible affliction of gender dysphoria deserve our love, our tenderness, our compassion, and empathy, but they don't deserve lies. You would never tell an anorexic teenager who self-identifies as fat that, yes, dear, you're fat, and you better eat less, because that's what you're doing. So please, follow science and not some misguided fad. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have one video testimony this evening submitted by Jen Hands.
Perk up your ears, school board, because it's time to hear from your voters the top 5 ways that you sexualize our children. Number 5, the school board asks little kids their gender preferences. These are kids too young for sex, but you ask them anyway. Then you're so proud if the kid is unhappy with their biological sex. Number 4, the school board conducts in-depth surveys asking our children detailed, explicit questions about their sex lives. Number 3, school board allows biological boys in the girls' bathroom, which has led to in Loudoun multiple rapes. All the while, the school board covers it up. Number 2, school board pushes sexualized books as mandatory reading, jeopardizing the innocence of the children and violating parental rights. The school board even says how they enjoy the sex books, paid by us, the taxpayers. Number 1, as if going through puberty isn't hard enough for a kid, the school board now is soon to vote on combining girls and boys' sex talks into one class. Most kids will be uncomfortable with this change, but as long as the less than 1% is happy with it, that's what you, the school board, focuses on. Overall, the message you, the school board, pushes is sex, sex, and more sex. Groomers, that's what you are.
Agenda item 3.02, strategic plan update. I call on Dr. Reed for
Excuse me,
strategic plan.
I'd like a point of order, please.
Yes, Ms. Marin?
Is it acceptable to use slurs to the board and calling us groomers? I thought we discussed a certain level of decorum for the language that would be used for us in public. I just want to note that.
It is not appropriate, Ms. Marin, to use slurs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Strategic plan update. Agenda item 3.02, strategic plan update. I call on Dr. Reed for the strategic plan update.
Good evening, and it's my pleasure this evening to present our strategic planning update. This afternoon, we concluded 2 full days of our core planning team with 130 community members, staff, and students. And I must say it was a highly energizing time as we had the opportunity to talk about our current data and really think about what's possible in terms of Fairfax County Public Schools moving forward. So thank you, Laura. One of the things, and let's go one more, please. I want to share with the board that our strategic plan student survey window, as you know, opened November 2nd, and it's scheduled to close this Friday for those students not opted out by their families. As of this evening, we've had over 90,000 student responses that have been received, and we're hoping to hit 100,000 of the 138,000 that we have pinged on that survey. We're really excited about the return rate and feel that that's a strong showing on behalf of our Fairfax County students. Once the survey closes, the data will be analyzed and the planning team will be having an opportunity to review those in January. So many thanks to our students, the staff that facilitated that, and the principals who led it. Moving forward, we have principal-led focus groups, which is another opportunity for student input. As of December 1st, 129 of our school sites have completed these focus group discussions. And this is a fabulous rate of work. I just want to pause for a moment to thank our principals across this division. It has been a really, I think, busy fall. Many competing interests, but the fact that they've taken the time to sit down with our students and be thoughtful about our future, I believe demonstrates the depth of their commitment, and I'm grateful for our principals and school leadership here in Fairfax County. Once these focus group discussions are finished, just as the student surveys, the data will be analyzed. That data will then be given to the alignment team and back to the core planning team. And the board, of course, will also have an opportunity to review that data. But many thanks to the principal-led work. The core planning team is the team I was referring to that we had an opportunity to convene Wednesday and Thursday. I want to give a special thank you to Dr. Frances Ivy, who's here this evening. If we could give it up for Dr. Ivy. She and Marcy Neal and Dr. Iona Spikes spent a great deal of time. Dr. Ivy and Dr. Spikes are the champions, along with Mr. George Pacera. We have 3 champions, 2 staff, and a community champion for our core planning team. And the 3 of them really led a significant amount of work over the last couple days. Dustin Schmidt, as well as Marcy Neal, and Angie, our project manager, worked very hard as well to do technical details and prepare us. I want to remind the board that the core planning team is composed of over 150 members. And you can see the percentage breakdown. We talked about who was in the room today, and it's a very broad cross-section of our community, and I'm tremendously proud of the conversations, at times difficult, but what they were able to craft this afternoon was truly inspiring, just filled with hope. Our instructional focus team will convene tomorrow and on Monday, and I'd like to commend Dr. Sloan Presidio, who's going to lead that work. If we could recognize Dr. Presidio on that. Give him a hand, please. The instructional focus team, I think, is going to be very core to the work. That work is going to happen in parallel with our planning work. It'll include 121 team members, including 2 champions. 71% of the team are school-based members, and 29% central office members. It's been very important for us to think about involving what we call known voices with new voices. And we really want to think about that as we work towards our future, is including known voices and new voices. Our family team has its first meeting on Saturday morning. If we could move to the family team slide. Thanks, Laura. Saturday morning, we're going to have an opportunity to convene with 85 people minimally. Everyone was invited who was nominated, and you can see the breakout there. It includes members from all 5 regions, and we're going to have interpretation, language services, and childcare provided. I'm looking forward to spending time Saturday morning with our families, who will also be looking at student data, as all teams have. Another group that will be convening this coming week is our Faith House of Worship team. 190 faith-based organizations were reached out to after 2 rounds of invitations. At this time, we have 34 affirmative responses, and we plan to begin at 10 a.m. on December 1st. Really excited about that. And it's not too late to RSVP for that. The alignment team, as you recall, convenes on December 5th. And these are comprised of essentially electeds, higher ed, nonprofits, and business leaders. So we're looking to kick off our work December 5th, again next week. And finally, our community and staff surveys and forums. Want to remind our board and community that we're currently evaluating the really best time and method for these surveys, since we've already established that we are a survey-rich environment, and we want to make sure that, that we have an opportunity to really focus on these when they come out. Community forum dates are also being finalized. As you know, we're going to have magisterial sessions as well as at-large opportunities for community input. So there you have it. That's our strategic plan update, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Seeing no questions, we'll move on to agenda item 3.03, academic matters.
Excellent.
I'll call again on Dr. Reed.
Thank you, Chair Sizemore-Heiser. This is really an exciting moment. It might be my favorite part of the board agenda, simply because it's an opportunity to showcase the incredible work that goes on in our division. You know, we are responsible for so many topic areas, and most importantly, as you know, is the lifting up of the academic potential and work of each and every one of our students. This evening, we're going to talk a little bit about our English learner data. So if we want to go to the next slide, I want to invite Dr. Rich Polio, who is joining me this evening, because I needed an expert next to me in case you had some tough questions. And Dr. Polio, actually, I'll sort of be here, and he's going to walk through slides he prepared for me. So Dr. Polio, please.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So the slide you're looking at right now is to start. We want to understand who are English learners in FCPS. The largest circle shows our K-12 September membership. So you'll see 176,000. This does not include pre-K students. 176,168 at the end of September in grades K through 12. The second circle, the next circle includes language minority students. These are students who have indicated that they speak a language other than or in addition to English. That's 48% of our entire student population in grades K through 12, 84,464. The smallest circle are our English learners, and these are students who are currently receiving English language development services in all of our schools. These students constitute 20% of the entire FCPS student population. And actually, this is data as of September 2022. As of September, we currently have over 36,000 English learner students as of the end of this month, as of the end of November. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this slide shows the pass rates of English learners, former English learners, and students who were never English learners on SOL tests in reading from this past spring. As a reminder, English language proficiency levels are determined by an annual state test which occurs each winter, generally between January and March. English language proficiency levels 1 and 2 represent our newcomer students and entry-level students, and English language proficiency levels 3 and 4 are our intermediate and advanced English learners. The first column to the left represents the combined pass rates of all English learners, levels 1 through 4. And this is the data that we generally share with you, the school board, and with the public. So tonight, what we wanted to do is share with you the breakdown of that left-hand dark blue column. As you proceed from left to right, you can see that English language proficiency level 1 students have a pass rate of 11%. As students gain English language proficiency and move on to level 2, it rises to 12%. At level 3, it's 38%. And at level 4, it's 67%. Once students become officially English proficient, as measured by the WIDA access exam, for the first 2 years, the pass rate is 83%. And we've divided it there because in those first 2 years of becoming a former English learner, that's when we're required to federally monitor all of our students to ensure that they're making progress. That next column is former Ls 3+ years beyond their level, beyond when they reach proficiency. 91% of our former Ls who have been reclassified for 3 or more years pass their reading SOL tests. And those students who have never been English learners, the pass rate is 90%. So as you can see, our former Ls reach a level equal to, or in this case, just 1 percentage point higher than our students who were never English learners. So as the more time, I think what this graph shows is that the more time students have to learn English, the better they perform academically, and they do learn academic content at a rate just as equal to our students who were never English learners. If we could go to the next slide, please. And the next slide, you'll see similar results when it comes to mathematics. So in mathematics, our current English learners, the pass rate is 37%. And as I've mentioned, this is really the number that we share most frequently with schools very often, with the school board, with everyone. And so as you can see, again, in mathematics, just as in reading, as students gain English language proficiency, they also gain content understanding in mathematics. It's particularly exciting, I think, that our former English learners continue to be successful in FCPS. I mean, this is really what we want when it comes to English learners. They are not stagnant individuals. They don't stay at that same level forever, and it's really encouraging to see that our students gain academic content understanding as they gain that English language proficiency. Is there one more slide? So we want to stress, and we'll take questions, I think, in just a moment, but we do want to stress that, we consider, certainly in our office, and I think across Fairfax County Public Schools, we consider multilingualism a superpower. And our students who are English learners, as they gain English, we know that they're highly intelligent, highly capable students who really we want to acknowledge for their strengths. Improving the educational experience and outcomes for our Ls is really the collective responsibility of all of us. It's our ESOL teachers, our classroom teachers, school administrators, central office staff, school board, and the community all working together, this is what's going to make our English learners thrive. So thanks very much, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Dr. Anderson?
Thank you. I am so appreciative of the data. Can we go back to either the math or the reading? I would appreciate that moving forward when we are presented with the demographics and performance information, that this also is included because it tells the full story. It tells a story that language acquisition is powerful. And so I would love to hear from you all, because this tells us that once our kids achieve language proficiency, English language proficiency, then they're able to perform well on these assessments. So what are some of the strategies that are being utilized to advance and accelerate that language proficiency?
First and foremost, I think we're really, I know in our office and across what we've spoken with principals and teachers about, first and foremost is really just Tier 1 instruction, ensuring that our English learners have daily reading, writing, speaking, and listening in English, that they have daily work with an ESOL teacher, an English learner teacher in their school. Of course, the way we look at it and the way the research shows that we should be working is that students who are level 1 beginners will have more time with an ESOL teacher, more time with English language development than, for example, a student who has, is a level 4. The other thing we do is we do provide data. All schools have access to what we call the English Learner Data Portfolio that does a breakdown of every single English learner, has a breakdown of their skills in reading, in writing, in listening and speaking, because we know that just because a student is, for example, level 3, a student might be doing just fine, have reached the proficiency level officially in, let's say, speaking and listening, but they're not there yet in reading and writing. So that helps teachers and administrators kind of focus resources and focus instruction on particular domains for students as they're moving up through those levels. So, I mean, that's just 2 examples. I think we'll,
No, thank you for that. The other piece of data that I would be interested in, as you're speaking about students as they navigate through the continuum of the WIDA throughout the levels, I'd like to get a sense of how long does it take our kids to traverse through those levels? Is it 1 year? Is it after 1 year they've moved to the next WIDA? And do we have kids who are at the lower levels for years at a time? And if so, what are we doing differently for those students? So I know you don't have that data in front of you right now, but I would be interested in that breakdown, because I'd like to know how many of our kids are making gains in 1 year and how many are taking multiple years within the ELD levels.
Yeah, I think you're talking about what we call long-term English learners. For some students that take longer than, say, 5 to 7 years. And we do have that data. VDOE has that data as well, so we can share that with you at a later time.
And also on average, how long does it take students to move from one level to the other, on average?
On average, it would take for each, it's about 1.5 years per level, but students move differently,
Sure.
Each individual student is different, and it depends. It's kind of like sometimes we compare to Olympic swimming, and Dr. Reed, I hope, appreciates this analogy, because from the athletics perspective is that, so when you're just learning how to swim, the first time you try and, you swim across the pool, you swim 1 lap, you may swim it in, let's say, 3 minutes. Maybe the next week you can swim it in, 1.5 minutes. You make this great gains, right? But when you're in the Olympics, you're already at such a high level, you're really just trying to make, milliseconds or, just a little bit of time, and that's a big deal for you. So it's the same thing as a level 1 student. You can see tremendous gains as a newcomer student. You can see tremendous gains, particularly in that social language, in listening and speaking over those first few years. As students need to learn academic content, that becomes a little bit more challenging and just takes more time to learn. So it can be more challenging for even our level 3 and level 4 students to make significant gains. Just takes a little bit more time.
Sure, and since time is what we need for our students, I'm particularly concerned with our students who do come to us without a lot of time left in their academic
Right.
careers, if
Mhm.
you're coming to us as a ninth
Uh-huh.
grader, 10th grader, and
Yes.
11th grader. So I'd also be interested in this breakout by grade level,
Sure.
if you can offer that, because that'll
Mhm.
give me a sense of where are we seeing the largest gaps.
Mhm.
So thank you.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Cohen?
I'll add one more disaggregation point, but it would be interesting, I think, for us, even if you don't have a lot of data, maybe even just qualitative data, about the difference between kids who come here with limited or interrupted formal education, to see the difference between kids who we get who have had loads of education in that native language and come to us with an ability and a different literacy, probably skill set, I would guess, than our kids who haven't had those opportunities. Do you have any sense of that?
Sure, yes, we have that data, and I think so you would be speaking of our SLIFE students, students with limited or interrupted formal education, and we started, several years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, compiling that data. We did it on our own. Fairfax County, I think, was really a trailblazer in that, and the state has since, just about a year ago, has since required us to report numbers of SLIFE students. And we do recognize that those students need additional resources and support. So yeah, we can definitely share that data with you and talk more about, I would certainly be interested in talking more about things that we can do collectively, again, to support those students.
That'd be amazing. I think the other question I have, we've seen in recent years, and I'm not gonna, only one of us up here actually taught English as a second language, so I will defer to my colleague over here. But just in seeing more recent research about educating kids in their using more native language instead of sort of the old school frame of thought of that you only gave instruction in English, how much do we incorporate that here for our students?
I don't know the number offhand. We do have a number of two-way immersion schools here in Fairfax County Public Schools, and the research shows that that programming does do has tremendously great positive effects for students. So that's the most formal way we have of teaching students in their native language, because those schools, those programs have 50% of students in in their home language, either Spanish, or we do have one school in Korean, and the target language, and then 50% who are native English speakers. So in that program, that's definitely supportive. But we also do encourage students to speak home languages in classrooms, both to help them understand content and to understand practices in the classroom. We have many bilingual teachers in the school system, and we encourage our bilingual teachers to speak the home language of students with students in the classroom as a means of helping students to understand, for example, procedures and what to do, and certainly to make students feel comfortable and families feel welcome. Yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Tolan?
Actually, I'm really happy to follow that because I had a very similar questioning. I was going to ask about the two-way immersion programs and successes you're seeing there. And also was really interested in the idea of teaching kids in their home language, especially like Ms. Cohen was talking about students that come to us with a lot of education, but it's just not in English. What are you seeing, how are those kids doing on math, for example? I could see how the reading SOLs could still be very difficult for them, but are they doing better in math, for example, if they've got strong math background, it's just not in English?
I think I want to be careful about, I don't have the data in front of me specifically for those students. I can say that we do have a few schools a few elementary schools in the county where we have some programming that is focused on using the home language as a bridge to English. So they spend a short period of the day working on Spanish literacy skills, because we know that as their Spanish literacy skills grow, that they will have an easier time learning English, that English will come easier and quicker over time. So I don't have the mathematics data for those students, but we are finding that that's been beneficial for students and staff at the schools.
Awesome, thank you. Thanks for being innovative.
Sure.
Thank you. Ms. Pekarsky?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Polio, for being here with us tonight. My questions were actually asked by Dr. Anderson, so I'm going to take this time to just put a plug in that I would love, and I know we have busy schedules, I think it would be so helpful and informative for this board, especially as we're talking about our strategic planning, to have you as part of a work session to talk about what is happening in our schools, maybe bring some of these ESOL teachers to talk to us about their experiences in serving the different ELL populations. So it's just a plug. I really hope that we could do that at some point because I really am very interested in this life services, and that is something that has come up in my high schools repeatedly as we are getting larger numbers of students. So that's it. I'm going to put that plug in since you are here, but I really appreciate the disaggregated data. It's extremely helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Amesh.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Polio. I know you've been a long-time advocate for our ESOL students, and Dr. Presidio for your leadership in this area as well. I guess, can we go back to that slide with the numbers of students, not really a Venn diagram, but yeah, thank you.
Concentric circles.
Concentric circles, yeah. I guess I wanted to ask you just off the bat why you chose to talk to us about this today for the academic matters. What was going through your all's minds?
For me, the reason why I felt it was important to share this information is because we often confuse who in our division is an English learner with who in our division may not be an English learner but may speak another language at home. You know, I can give one example if it's okay. For example, last year when we had our special education review, there was data that was shared with you saying that a certain percentage of English learners were also in special education. I was watching on my computer in my office and noticed right away that the number was very high, and it was because an accident, you know, and it was not intentional at all. That there was confusion between who was an English learner in the data poll and who was not an English learner but may have a family that speaks a language other than English. So I think it's important that the school board, that all of us understand the differences, and also that, you know, our language minority families are families who, you know, students who speak English, who are English proficient, still may have, their families may still have a need for translation or interpretation at home. So for this, I think in the spirit of, I think Academic Matters is meant to try and provide clarity on certain issues of academics that we don't always get to talk about, and I think this slide in particular, from a demographic standpoint, can help all of us understand the difference between, you know, different groups of students.
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate you highlighting that. I was certainly one of those kids who was referred to, you know, the ELL program despite being born and raised here, and then having my family have to fight that fight. And I don't think, I think, Stella, you might actually have been in the same boat. You were an English language learner, right? Yeah, even though you were up here. Yeah, yeah. So that's a common challenge, and I've certainly heard it in the community. And I guess you know, it's one of those things where perhaps it's not that they need to be referred to ELL, but maybe that's where we provide additional literacy support, because I will tell you the experience too of exposure is different. I remember, you know, some of the analogy tests they would have us do in 6th grade would make a kid feel stupid only because they didn't necessarily recognize certain English, like the word regatta, you know, like things that wouldn't have necessarily come to a kid's experience by elementary school simply because of language exposure. So that goes to speaking to, I think, the importance of culturally responsive practices in this area as well, in how we address the needs of that second circle of students. So I appreciate that. But even more broadly than this, I guess you chose to bring the piece on the instructional needs, or the SOL pass rates, as a part of our academic piece. I was seeing it as an area of high potential, that this is an area worth investing in because the returns are so high. But I'll let you speak for yourself on that.
So you're asking why we chose to...
Yeah, I didn't even mean this slide only. I was really talking more broadly when I asked originally.
Well, Dr. Reed said I could only bring 3 slides, so that's why.
Yeah. But I meant the whole thing, not just this slide.
I know. I'm just joking. I apologize. I think the SOL information is critical because also, for our English learners, our ultimate goal is that our English learners become academically successful and learn content. Learn English, are successful on SOL tests. Students need to pass SOL tests in order to graduate. SOL tests in English, in reading, and in reading, writing, mathematics, and social studies, and science. So I think that's really important that we share the academic information with you about how our Ls are doing.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Dr. Reed.
Yeah, thank you. The other reason, and Laura, would you go to the reading slide, please? Thank you. One of the things, I guess I also, just from a timing standpoint, 2 things. One, it came up yesterday in our conversation at the strategic planning meeting, which is, we often sort of create monoliths about certain demographic data. And the monolith around, well, if you're an EL student, there are these tremendous struggles. And the reality is there are struggles, and staying with the struggle, our EL students are going to, triumph, thank you. Our EL students, not unlike Ms. Togby as a swimmer, are going to, hit that mark. And we need to remember that and not just think of the 31%. Secondly, I would say that Dr. Anderson, at the beginning of this, hit the nail on the head. What we really need to be thinking about is how do we accelerate that movement between those levels. And as we are moving into our budgeting process right now, and as I contemplate with our staff what our highest priorities are, I would argue that as we think about this work that Dr. Polio and Dr. Presidio and the entire team has been working on, what we know is that we know what works. What we need is to be able to use time and a few more resources likely to accelerate those steps so that our English learners can see those triumph moments sooner in their academic career, which will enable them to take more advanced courses sooner and really create a very different path for their future. And we think that that's very important. So timing-wise, it was important for those 2 reasons. So I just wanted to be clear about that.
No, I appreciate that. And I mean, it seems like an area of high, I don't want to say one of the highest, but return of investment opportunities, really, in academic performance. And I mean, the most dangerous thing to me is to look at this, and I'll speak for myself first, where we tend to think, oh, well, that makes sense. Obviously, if they speak less English, they're going to perform, lower, so we just accept it because that's what we would expect. But the other way to see it is, oh, wait a minute, this is a differentiating factor, let's invest more in it because it can really move the needle, right, rather than accept what we'd expect of the data. So I really appreciate that and hope that that's the takeaway and reframing how we think about, even for my colleagues, whether this is a worthwhile investment. And lowering ratios, which we know are egregiously high across Virginia, but even in FCPS compared to the best practice, right?
Right. Well, one other thing just to leave you with, and I know we don't want to take too much more time on this, but one of the things we're really batting around, I know at the cabinet level and leadership team level, is how do we provide more ESOL training to all staff, right? Mm-hmm. It's not simply, so I mean, in terms of acceleration strategies, it may be more people, but it's also how do we support differently all of our staff currently. There are many states in the country that require a level of ESOL training to even have a teaching certificate. So we're really thinking about all the opportunities and all the paths in which we can all become sort of more effective in this arena, because what's good for our English language learners is good for all learners, right? And we want to make sure all of our learners have access to Tier 1 content, that they don't become curriculum disabled by not being able to access Tier 1 instruction.
There's that targeted universalism. I appreciated that comment.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. And to that point, I was going to mention next was the advanced programming access. Because when we look at the reading data, okay, great. People who don't speak English don't do well in an English exam. Duh. But then when you look at math, that's still a little troubling, right? I know the assessment is in English, which is a whole other ridiculous issue. But that's something to think about, right? If a kid are we putting a cap on their potential because of the offerings that are available to them in English, right? And maybe we can follow a model similar to the special ed one, where they have someone with them, or we invest more in that. So I appreciate that that's the direction we're headed in, and just I'm grateful that you guys chose to prioritize this, because it is a major segment of our population, and they're not always the ones filling these seats. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Frisch?
Thank you. Next, on the 6th, I think we're having a work session about our Goal 1 and 2 report, and it made me think, as we were listening here, about the unique needs of our EL kids when it comes to learning recovery from the pandemic. So I'm interested in hearing from y'all about those unique challenges and what unique strategies are being used to help close those learning recovery gaps.
Well, I think first and foremost, kind of what I went back to before, is that the first most important thing that we've been working on is ensuring that every English learner is receiving ESOL services every day, and really working with getting the best Tier 1 instruction. So our office, we've made a goal to visit. We have about 20 of us in the ESOL office at various levels and positions, and we're visiting every single school in FCPS. So far, we've been to 100 since October 1st, and we have an hour-and-a-half meeting with each school, reviewing their data, reviewing the English learner data, and talking with them about listening to their challenges and how they're doing. So, because we really feel like, and we did this today actually in our strategic planning work, we really need to know what the current reality is now that we're through the pandemic in order to move forward. So that's one piece that we feel like is really important, and I do plan as director to make sure that we compile that data and look and see like what exactly all schools need and all English learners need. I think the other piece the second piece I would say is communication with families. And as we communicate, the more we communicate with our English learner families and have true two-way communication, the better we can know what their needs are, and the better we can support them. So, since when the pandemic started in March 2020, we introduced United Language Group to all schools. We paid for it centrally, and that was a real game changer at the time. And since that time, the school board supported funding for Talking Points, which is now up and running at all schools. And that's really, we've sent out almost, I believe, since Talking Points went live on October 1st, there have been back and forth over 800,000 messages, text messages between families and teachers, which is incredible. And I've read through, not 800,000 messages, but I've read and to look at kind of themes of what people are talking about, and mainly it's clarifying, oh, there's a test tomorrow, please be ready for it. Your child was absent today, how are they doing? And so it's kind of basic things that we take for granted that English-speaking families have easy access to teachers about on a regular basis. And I think that more instant communication is really going to help families and the English learner families in the long term. So those are two examples.
You read my mind about family engagement. I was going to ask you what more we as the board can be doing to support that type of work. Where do you feel there are needs that are not being met or could be met more robustly?
I would say, going back to what Dr. Reed mentioned, is that for me, the number one improvement or thing that we can do is provide training and support for all of our teachers. Our English learners are not just with ESOL teachers each day, they're with math teachers, biology teachers, CTE teachers, second grade teachers, kindergarten teachers, special education teachers, and music teachers, all the electives, all the specials, music, PE, art. And so, these teachers work with ELs every day, and there's a wide continuum of confidence, of self-confidence in working with ELs. So I think that's really, if we can work on planning time, we can work on, strategies, things like that, where we have time for teachers to collaborate, time for our office or other entities to train teachers, I think would be really helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frisch. Ms. McLaughlin?
Yes. Hi, Rich, I just had one quick question to something you had said to Ms. Omish about the middle circle, the 84,000
Yes.
students that we've called language minority. I had a family reach out to me several years back concerned that their children, English was their primary language.
Yes.
The mother had been foreign born, and the father was not, and they, spoke both languages at home. And the parents were upset that when they registered the kids, they were automatically being designated as a language minority student. So just looking at that chart again and what you'd said earlier, is it that we designate them based on if the family indicates that another foreign language is spoken at home?
Yes, so we use a home language survey. It's part of the registration packet for all families, it's federally required that we do this. We use Virginia has the same questions for every single school in Virginia, so we use the same home language survey that Arlington, that Richmond, that everyone uses around the state. And if a family answers one of the questions on that survey with a language other than English, then we are federally required, that 84,000 students represents students who must be assessed to see if they require ESOL services. And we do have, sometimes we have families who feel that they did not fill out the form properly, for example, and so we work with those families. We always work with those families individually to work with them just to make sure that what's reflected on the form is accurate for them, and we'll work with any family on that.
But I wanted to press this because I think it's important for the public as well as for the board to understand these various populations. So again, just pressing a little bit on this some more, if and Ms. Omesh, I think you were sort of saying this, if a child is born here in the United States, they're speaking English in their home, and also it's considered their primary language. But simply because one of the parents is bilingual, because English is a second language for the parent, we've now are going, that by law, we're required, doesn't matter what the family says. So unless they either lie on the form, which we would never want them to do, but if they choose to do it because they're frustrated. I just remember the family was very upset and saying, I don't want my child to have to go through this.
We do speak with some upset families at times, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just think
it's the law, so we follow the law on that, yes.
Well, I would say, Dr. Reed, for a PowerPoint slide like this, I would like, because again, our public's always learning with us along the way, there should be some footnotes there and explaining that a little bit, because I think some people may look at those numbers and say, I'm not sure how that's even possible, or just really trying to get a handle on where the English language needs are within our students. And obviously, I think the EL population in the end speaks to the needs as opposed to just designation.
So we will make a correction on this slide and repost it with a footnote. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think even just like a hyperlink that lets wherever, you guys can end up sending people so they can understand that this isn't something that FCPS has done to create more red tape, because we get that reputation sometimes. We're just following the law. Thank you.
Right, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Kofax?
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Polio. I was at your table yesterday with the core planning team when we were talking about this, and I just do want to say to you, we've come a long way, and it's been under your leadership when we went from pilot schools in what are now, Justice and Lewis high schools, where we were just doing mere pullouts. We explained that to the table yesterday. So thank you, Dr. Reed, for considering bringing this up. I don't have questions because a lot of them were asked by some of my colleagues, or they're things that I, through the years, have know. But I do want to I appreciate Ms. McLaughlin's point, because that has also been an experience that I've seen, and I think it's important, like you said, we have the footnote, but I also think it's important that we have definitions when we talk about this, and maybe this is in this home, like if you're going to post these these instructional, these things, when we're here tonight, I think it's important that there's a link, but there's also then a link to all the definitions, what a SLIFE is, what an English learner, and I don't know if that's already on our thing, but it has been quite a while since you have come before the board to talk about the progress that we've made. I mean, it is, I don't know, you will know better than me, but it's been several years. And of course, there's been many reasons why, but I think it is high time that we really look at this, particularly in light, as you said, Dr. Reed, with the strategic plan, what progress we've made, where we're going. I personally have been so involved in this that I think I know some of the answers, but I think it would be a really good refresher for me as well as other people on the board to see, because I'm much more familiar with what's going on at the high school level, but I'm not even certain where we are with our elementary school English language learners right now, and what programs they're having and what success they're making. And when we talk about the duration, everybody's different, but I asked you this at the table yesterday. I said, is it still on average, if you get a SLIFE student in, is it going to take 5 to 7 years? And that's still about the average. And I think that's important for people to understand and know as we look at the data, as we talk about the data in these groups, because that is quite the tenure when you are getting students at a high school level and not be and trying to make progress. But I really appreciate this tonight, this data. I would just like an elongated version of this when we can. And so we'll put that on chair's notes. Add it to the list.
Thank you. Ms. Togby, did you wish to speak? I knew your light was up earlier. If you're okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you. I agree with many of what my colleagues have said, so I won't repeat them, but I did want to just flag a couple things. I really appreciate actually this slide talking about language minority and the explanation that you gave, so I appreciate, and I apologize, I can't remember which colleague asked for that explanation at this point, but the explanation you gave as to why this was included and that confusion that sometimes happens between EL students and language minority students. And I think it's just, I just wanted to flag, it's really telling that 48%, almost half of our students are language minority, and which means they speak a different language at home. But I want to ask you, does this mean the student speaks a different language at home, or the family speaks a different language at home?
I don't have that data specifically. I couldn't tell you, but I think that 84,000 comes specifically, as Ms. McLaughlin asked, from the home language survey. So it means that the language is most likely spoken at home, either just from the parents or it could be with the student.
It just flags an importance that, it shows our changing population probably in Fairfax County in some ways, and the increase of people who do speak a different language at home than English. As another person whose English was my second language and who was often identified for EL students services well past my need for EL services, it is an interesting dilemma that we have to, by mandate, if we put a home language, is different by federal law assessed. And I think that's a good thing to make sure we're not missing anybody. But I can understand it can be frustrating for families, and having lived it myself, right, to actually be placed in EL classes. But I just think it just flags, as we go into our strategic planning work, the importance of recognizing perhaps the need, for supporting families where English is maybe not be their first language, and some families are proficient in English or are fluent, and some may not be, but to make sure we provide those supports and understanding cultural backgrounds of our families. And for some of our students, I know some translate for their parents, some don't need to, and that's an important support to provide our students. So I think all of these, it would just be interesting to dig more into how we can support the language minority students and families and what they may or may not need for support. So I just wanted to flag that as a thought. There's no question there. So with that, thank you. I appreciate my colleagues, and I will add it to the list. And we don't have to go back to the regular meetings. We'll save that for a work session. So I appreciate it. It's on the list as we've been asked for. So but we don't, at regular meetings, we don't do go back. So with that, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much for your report. And then I would like to go on to agenda item 3.04, Student Representative Matters, and I call on Ms. Togby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone, and happy Thursday. I am still in disbelief that it's December 1st. I don't know how we're here already. In the time since I've last updated you all, I've gotten the opportunity to participate in a lot of activities. The SEALs met 2-3 weeks ago, and we discussed the equity policy and adaptation students would really like to see to it, and it was really enlightening to be a part of that conversation. The SBA was so much fun. I met student reps across the whole state, and we discussed many ways that our division operated and the ways we gather student input and ways we might even change it. And it was just really insightful because it really reinforced the whole idea of how important student voice is. The Gum Springs Gala, I had the pleasure of attending the Gum Springs Gala with Ms. Corbett Sanders, which was an amazing event. I didn't know much about the Gum Springs community prior, so it was really a big educational experience for me. And it was also very exciting to have Ms. Cohen at South County this week, along with Delegate Tran, for Take Your Legislator to School Month. They got to participate in a few classes, and I have to say, I really think they enjoyed the Theater 2 warm-up. In regards to strategic planning, yesterday and today, I had the opportunity to participate in the process where I got to discuss strengths and concerns within our county with multiple community stakeholders, faculty members, and students. I can certainly say that the value of meeting students not only by name but also by need is something that is not only heard but I think is really being stressed during this process. And I do have to say my favorite part so far has definitely been sitting next to the advocate icon herself, Ms. Chin Wright, who has provided me with fresh insight at every turn, and just being able to view that available data and sit with that information has been really powerful and just a big educational experience for me. I also want to make a note about the National Inclusive Schools Week resolution. It really warmed my heart because being able to see active examples of not only the faculty members being inclusive, but also my peers from events like International Night to organizations and clubs that highlight and value our diverse community is really powerful because FCPS is truly leading when we show that inclusivity within education can be life-changing, really. I've spent the last few weeks reminding students that they recently received mail, and in it included their favorite activity, filling out a survey. The 2023-2024 school year student calendar survey went live, and I have to say I have spent quite a bit of time encouraging students to fill it out, so much so that I think my advisory class is very tired of me speaking on it, because it really is an important step in their voice being factored in the decision-making process and what will happen to the school year calendar. To wrap up, I really want to say that I'm excited about the progress that I've been able to make with student groups, and these last couple of weeks have really been great, so I can't wait to see the outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and as always, we appreciate your, we appreciate you. Thank you very much. I'm just gonna leave it at that and your updates, so it's wonderful to see. I will move on to agenda item, apologize, I lost my computer went to sleep. Agenda item 3.05, Superintendent Matters. I'll call on Dr. Reed.
Thank you, Chair Sizemore-Heiser, and thank you to Ms. Togby and Ms. Sizemore-Heiser and Ms. Dernak-Kovacs for participating in our core planning team over the last couple days. It's really been, I think, an inspiring opportunity to be in community with so many people in our community. I hope you also all enjoyed the recent holiday weekend, a little bit of a break, a little bit of a time to rest, reflect perhaps, and renew our commitment to this amazing work in an abundantly joyful fashion. I want to share, since last we met, that I visited Cooper Middle School, where I had an opportunity to visit classrooms and hear the Cooper Symphonic Band perform. They were pretty incredible. I believe I was with board member Elaine Tolan there. And oh my gosh, when we walked in, I thought it was a professional band playing, and it was our middle school band. They are just really phenomenal. Also had an opportunity to meet with our McLean High School student leaders called the Committee on Raising Student Voices, and just excited about the ideas that they were lifting up and how they centered the needs of their friends and fellow students in the room. It was really amazing. And also had an opportunity to be at Lee's Corner Elementary School's Thanksgiving breakfast with their SAC team. And the SAC team was fabulous. I got to meet a lot of young SAC members who were serving up breakfast and just really excited about the opportunity to visit with staff. I also want to mark a moment that I did have my last community conversation of the first series, so I finished 28 of those this week. I know, right? So the Annandale High School Adams, Dr. Anderson and Miss Sizemore-Heiser were there. The Adams were a very proud group and very well attended, and raised a number of concerns, ideas, and a lot of pride in that pyramid community. Last evening, I also had the opportunity with our leadership team and Ms. Omesh to meet with members of the Muslim community. And we had a fabulous dinner meeting with community advocates and leaders, and also an opportunity to meet with community members following that to hear concerns and thoughts and ideas, and to share the experiences of our Muslim neighbors and community members as well as students. I want to thank all of those who have come out to various community events. There are all kinds of music concerts, theater productions, athletic events going. I mean, you can't visit a school 24/7 that there isn't something happening, and that excitement is fabulous. This past week, in fact, yesterday, I think it was just yesterday, I had an opportunity to be part of a smart biz sort of panel activity with a number of our business leaders here in Northern Virginia. And wouldn't you know it, our kids were there. And they were so amazing and inspiring to all of these elected leaders and business executives. We had our Wayanoke Woodchucks there doing their Bebot programming, and just my challenge to the young Bebot programmers, where I wasn't seeing the Bebots flying yet, so they were trying to figure out by next year how to get them to fly. We had our juniors, or actually 2 seniors from Chantilly High School, who had created the walker to support our Parkinson's patients, who I think were negotiating a deal for their innovation. And then our young Braddock Eagles were there with their coding. So it was really a proud moment to be from Fairfax County with our young learners and high school learners leaving, engaging in such amazing activity. And today, I want to share that I spent time at John R. Lewis High School, had an opportunity, I did not see Ms. Togby, but I had an opportunity to shoot hoops with Cohen Samuels, and I'm excited to go back and watch them play. He plays on the team there, the basketball team. I was really there for an interview with their student media production group, and had an opportunity to visit with the entire broadcasting team and just a group of young professionals. Lancers, it's my understanding, right, Ms. Togby? Yep. So they had a lot of great questions. I got to take a tour of the school and shoot a few hoops, so it's been a great day. So thank you, Chair Sizemore-Heiser.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. And we'll go on to agenda item 3.06, Goal 3 report. I call on Dr. Reed for the introduction.
Thank you, Chair Sizemore-Heiser. And I have reminded staff that the goal reports in a regular board meeting are more succinct reports, as we do have work session opportunities to go into more detail. So if the community's watching, this might be more of a summary type report as we then move into a work session which provides more detail. So for our Goal 3 report, it's my pleasure to introduce Marty Smith, our Chief Operation Officer, who will identify the staff supporting him in this report.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Reed, and good evening to everyone on the board. And I do want to do just a quick shout out to Dr. Polio for a great presentation. It was great to have the discussion focused on our L students, and I love how the Academic Matters creates this opportunity for dialogue, and so he did a fantastic job. We're here tonight to bring the Goals 3 and 4 reports, our final goal reports, from the 2015-2020 Strategic Plan Ignite. And for those board members who were on the board in 2015, you may hearken back to our time in the cafeteria when we had retreats, when we were looking at data We were thinking about the way forward with strategic planning, and here we are in yet another cycle. And I want to take this opportunity to thank Ms. Lady Haruda and her Office of Research and Strategic Improvement. They've been here at our sides the entire time, helping us work through metrics, helping us work through the language, whether it's goals, whether it's desired outcomes. And so at the time it was Dr. Ricardo Sockwell, it's then gone on to Ms. Haruda, and we certainly do thank that entire office for their help and support with our strategic planning efforts. Today we have goals 3 and 4, which is human resources and resource stewardship. Along with Ms. Haruda, we have Dr. Sherry Wilson here, who's going to provide an update on goal 3. We also have Mr. Chuck Fanshaw, who's going to provide an update on goals 4, along with Ms. Lee Burden, who will provide an update on staff work on goal 4. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to Ms. Haruda.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. So this report is a look back at fiscal 22, so what was going on last year, and in particular, we'll also sort of take a journey over the 5 years that this strategic plan was in place. As always, the request for the school board is to approve the report. We have an agenda here. It's similar to what we did when we were doing the goals 1 and 2 reports. So we'll go through some actions about what the school board has done to support this goal area. We'll go through the metric performance, a summary of how we've done since baseline, and then our goal champions, who are leadership team members responsible for each of the goal areas, will speak to it, and we'll also end with some future considerations. Here we have our 2 different desired outcomes related to this goal. We have our exceptional employees, which is really around recruitment, hiring, and retention of our staff, as well as our market competitive compensation. So in terms of reports and things that are linked to what the school board has done, many of the school board actions over the last year or so are described on this slide that supported our premier workforce, and a lot of them were in support of competitive compensation for our staff. We have our summary of performance. You can see the 6 specific aspirations for this goal area listed here. It was what FCPS wanted to achieve in the area of premier workforce. And overall, FCPS met or exceeded the target on 3 of those aspirations, made progress on 1 of them, and had no progress on 2. Now, going a little bit more into depth on each of these aspirations, we'll start with one of the ones related to exceptional employees that has to do with recruitment. Every open teaching position will have at least 5 highly qualified applicants. And you can see that FCPS continues to move further from meeting this aspiration each year, with the decline in qualified applicants per open teaching position accelerating over the last 2 years. And this downward trend over the last 5 years really reflects national and regional teacher shortages, and this acceleration is probably also related to the COVID-19 pandemic over the last few years. Our second recruitment aspiration has to do with the diversity of qualified teacher applicants matching the diversity of Fairfax County. And here FCPS moved the ethnic diversity of its qualified teacher applicant pool closer to that of the county, while not making similar progress with gender diversity. And the ethnic diversity in particular increased from 25% at baseline to 29% most recently. But nonetheless, we did not meet the 2020 targets for ethnic or gender diversity of this pool. Now we'll move on to one of our hiring aspirations. This one has to do with all teaching positions will be filled by July 1st. And until the COVID pandemic occurred, FCPS had consistently met the target for this aspiration, which was to have 97.5% of our positions filled on July 1st. But we haven't done as well in the last 2 years, and in fact, performance this past year was below the baseline for the first time. Now, nonetheless, FCPS still had 95% of our teaching positions filled by July 1st, and that put FCPS in a good position to prepare for the school year. But it's important for us to continue to consider how to bolster recruitment within this post-COVID pandemic context. And then moving on to our hiring aspiration that's focused on diversity. The diversity of hired teachers will match the diversity of qualified teacher applicants. FCPS successfully met or exceeded its diversity targets in hiring by having all racial, ethnic, and gender groups move closer to their proportion of qualified teacher applicants. In fact, we increased the representation of our Black and male hired teachers since baseline by a combined 22 percentage points, and that appears to mean that FCPS has taken appropriate steps to ensure that once our diverse qualified teachers are recruited, that we are effective in hiring them. And our final aspiration, having to do with exceptional employees, is around employee retention rates will be within the national average. And FCPS continued to meet or exceed the target retention rate of 85% for teachers, administrators, and operational staff. Now, our final aspiration for Premier Workforce moves us over to the market competitive compensation outcome. Here, FCPS will maintain all pay scales within 95 to 105% of market pay. And starting in fiscal year 20, FCPS attained this for the first time and has been able to maintain that level of pay scales within the desired range since then. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Wilson for the Gold Champion response.
Thank you, Ms. Haruta. And good evening, Chair Sizemore-Heismer and members of the board. According to a 2022 report by the American Association of Colleges for Teacher Education, the number of students completing teacher education programs in the United States dropped by more than a third between 2008 and 2019, and those numbers continue to dwindle. This phenomenon is evident in our ability to recruit the numbers of candidates that we were once able to recruit and hire from traditional teacher education preparation programs. As a result, FCPS is shifting its recruitment efforts to strategies such as grow your own programs, early recruitment, and alternate routes to licensure. Understanding that a diverse educator workforce produces positive outcomes for all students, our team continues to strive to source a diverse teacher workforce. Next slide, please. To retain our premier workforce, HR continues to administer exit surveys and coordinate with the state on climate and working condition surveys, while working to develop state interviews to assist the district in assessing what motivates our employees to remain and what can be done to improve the employee experience. Based on summary exit survey results, salary and pay continues to be a top stated reason for leaving the division. As a result, HR will continue to analyze and compare compensation data to ensure that FCPS remains competitive in terms of pay. More information will be shared on this within the next slide. And I also need to boast that FCPS continues to maintain a robust awards and recognition program, honoring 3,500 employees each year, with an additional 5,000 employees recognized for their service annually through the Service Awards program. In response to the goal to offer market competitive compensation packages, FCPS was well positioned to maintain all 8 pay scales within 95 to 105% of market pay in fiscal year 2022. However, 2021 benchmarking reflected the H schedule coming in just under market goal at 94% of market. So 7 of the 8 scales were within market at the time of the study. The study also revealed that FCPS pay scales are lower than the market, particularly in the maximum salaries, and the percentage of positions below market goal have increased, which is an indication of concern around competitive pay. Additional funding and staff will be necessary for continued ad hoc monitor and review of jobs, as well as pay scale modifications to properly action classification and compensation concerns which have been noted. At this time, Ms. Haruta will provide future considerations.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. So in terms of future considerations, There's continued innovation in the recruitment of qualified teacher applicants really needs to be an ongoing priority to ensure that we continue to have adequate instructional capacity. In addition, FCPS should evaluate the reasons why FCPS staff choose to stay and then leverage those reasons to maintain high retention rates, especially among our teachers and our operational staff. Additionally, FCPS must continue to conduct ongoing work on our market competitiveness and fund market scale adjustments to remain attractive to current and future employees. So funding of those market scale adjustments and step increases will continue to be necessary. And that ends our Goal 3 report.
Thank you for that great information and succinctness. We'll also go on to agenda 3.07 Goal 4 report. And just a reminder, after we hear the presentations on Goal 3 and Goal 4, we will do one round of board questions. We will have a work session on Goal 3 and Goal 4 reports on January 3rd, so there'll be more time to ask questions there. So this is just a preliminary streamlined, and I appreciate the streamlined presentation. So I'll call on Dr. Reed for the Goal 4 report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this point, it's my pleasure to introduce again Mr. Marty Smith, our Chief Operations Officer, to introduce staff and present the Goal 4 report. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
And I'm just going to turn the presentation over to Ms. Haruda.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. So here we have our Goal 4 report. Again, the request of the school board is to approve the report. We have the same agenda as we just went through for Goal 3. On this particular goal, we have one desired outcome. It's our effective and efficient budgeting and allocation outcome. And here again are some specific linkages to school board decisions and support. You can see on here school boards leveraging of federal grants to support our one-to-one devices for our pre-K to grade 2 students, as well as advocacy for FCPS's piloting of electric buses, amongst other things. We have our summary of metric performance for Goal 4. Goal 4 includes 4 aspirations, and that includes the first 2 about fiscal issues, 1 around facilities or classroom space, and the last one about school safety, which includes 3 separate metrics, one related to students, families, and to staff. You can see in terms of a summary, we met or exceeded 1 of those. We progressed toward the target on 3, and no data were available on 2 of them. That was due to surveys that did not include these items last year. Digging a tiny bit deeper on that, on our first aspiration, all spending will be allocated using, on our first aspiration, FCPS will maintain a cost per pupil plus or minus 1,000 of the average cost per pupil of the Washington area boards of education, or WABE average. FCPS continued to meet this aspiration, being within 1,000 again during fiscal 22. Our second aspiration, that all spending will be allocated using the Strategic Decision-Making Cycle, or SDMC as we refer to it. And this is the approach that FCPS has adopted to continuous improvement in its efficient and effective use of resources. Now, since the baseline, FCPS met its aim of aligning all spending to its 8 strategic outcomes, but more recently has backtracked to a more general alignment of spending to the 4 goal areas while awaiting its new strategic plan. And under the leadership of our new superintendent, FCPS has committed to developing an updated plan which will set the priorities for our future resource allocation. Moving on to our facilities aspiration, all schools will have adequate classroom space for students, eliminating the need for trailers. At the end of fiscal year 22, FCPS had 70 more temporary classrooms than it was expected to have based on this 2020 target, with most of the progress, however, coming over the last 2 years as the speed of removal of our temporary classrooms picked up. And since baseline, FCPS removed 289 temporary classrooms with a net decrease of 189 over the last 2 years. And then our final aspiration in this area, FCPS will maintain schools that all students, families, and staff consider safe. Unfortunately, the metric data has not been available consistently for this aspiration, so it limits our ability to interpret progress since baseline. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Burden to begin the Goal Champion response.
Good evening. K-12 often uses cost per pupil because it allows us to compare costs while factoring in enrollment. We've historically followed in the middle of cost per pupil ranking among the WABE participants. Salaries and class size policies tend to drive overall spending. And as Ms. Haruta said, we have met our aspiration over the past 5 years. In fiscal 22, the WABE average is a little higher than normal. 3 divisions opted not to participate in fiscal 22 in the WABE guide. And those 3 divisions tend to have a lower cost per pupil, so of course that pushed the average up. Again, comp is a big factor, and our WABE participation allows us to monitor the surrounding divisions on a pretty regular basis, and we will likely continue to meet this aspiration in the future. As far as strategic decision making, we've made strides in aligning the budget to the strategic plan, but we will need to enhance our ability to align the budget with the strategic plan in the future, and that will likely require a shift in processes and culture and require greater resources. And now I'm going to pass it off to Mr. Fanshawe for the next Gold Champion response.
Thank you. Good evening. Regarding adequate classroom space, continued reliance on renovations and additions are our main way of removing temporary classrooms. Increasing programs may impact the pace of trailer removal. We continue to recommend increasing support division-wide for removal due to age and condition regarding temporary classrooms. In consultation with the local schools, looking for efficient and appropriate use of space as we move forward. Moving on to safety. Over the last 3 years, we have received a significant amount of ESSER funding, which we have devoted to improving indoor air quality in schools, providing a safer environment within the schools. In FY22, we had 47 schools that were either in progress or completed, and we anticipate an additional 5 schools to be replaced in FY23. We've also funded the external safety audit, which is in the procurement process at this time.
So wrapping up the Goal 4 report are some future considerations. The first slide focuses on our finance ones. So it's going to be critical to complete the new FCPS strategic plan so we can have clear multi-year priorities to guide our continued efforts to align FCPS's budget allocations with strategic aims. We also, there will need to be considerable efforts, as Ms. Burden alluded to, in order to embed SDMC thinking into the FCPS culture, including how schools and departments operate and the repurposing of funds from ineffective or less than optimal activities. FCPS also will need to consider incorporating the SDMC concept more directly into both processes, but also the FCPS policy 1405 could be enhanced, which covers accountability for division efficiency and effectiveness. And then lastly, resources will need to be reserved that can be allocated for the high leverage actions that will be needed to address the division's soon to be updated strategic aims. In terms of the facilities side, opportunities for review of space utilization by facilities planning services in conjunction with school administrators can assist in maximizing the capacity. There's also a concern that there's no dedicated funding to remove temporary classrooms. An updated boundary policy that supports optimizing school capacity throughout the division may assist in achieving the removal of all temporary classrooms. And there's a deferred maintenance backlog which leads to outdated equipment due to insufficient funding and staffing shortfalls. And then lastly, green initiatives such as electric buses will require ongoing resource stewardship to implement and maintain. And that ends our Goal 4 reporting.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And just as a reminder to my colleagues, we'll do one round of questions as we do have a work session for Goal 3 and Goal 4 on January 3rd. So with that, I will call on Ms. McLaughlin, followed by Dr. Anderson.
Thank you. I'll just sort of spotlight some of my areas of interest, and then that might help staff with the actual work session. Mr. Fancha, I know again you're our acting interim, so you're just overseeing what you inherited. But the security vestibules has been an area of concern for our community and certainly for the board as well. So I don't see it listed here as a bullet point or a metric, but it would be helpful for the work session to bring us up to date on where that is and let us know what the needs are for your department to address that. For temporary classrooms, I'm really happy that you're focusing on age and condition and the challenge with programs and adding in programs and then therefore kind of reinforcing the need. But Dr. Reed, I'll point out that in, I think it's slide 14, there's a reference that, you know, space use is ultimately decided by a school's administration. I mean, I think that with your new leadership, we need to have that conversation with our principals. I deeply respect them, but the bottom line is we're trying to deliver optimal instruction, and I think that the facilities and leadership team needs to be setting some guidelines. I mean, keeping kids in temporary classrooms is just not optimal, so I think there needs to be a little more collaboration going on there. And then there was the reference about an updated boundary policy that supports optimizing school capacity, may assist in achieving the removal of all temporary classrooms. You know, I will say again that our existing boundary policy, as I understand it, has always continued to focus on minimizing students on buses, you know, trying to have them attend the schools that are closest to their homes and communities. And so I don't want the board's work on the boundary policy to be a rationale to say if we've got students contiguous to one another and there's vacancy across the street or in, you know, that's nearby. In the same token, I know my colleagues are well aware of my position on this. I don't believe in busing children past schools to go to another school. I don't think that's necessarily where the mandate is from our community at this point in time, and that is what a boundary policy conversation would be. But I certainly know from my community that people come to Fairfax County because we have exceptional schools, and they spend a lot of time figuring out where they want to live, and community, you know, neighborhood schools are a high value.
Thank you. Dr. Anderson?
Thank you. I just have one point of clarification, but before I get to it, I did want to go back to the academic matters that you shared. I quickly wanted to, I was following up, and I actually was on the same kind of line of thinking as Ms. Dernak Kofax. When it comes to some of the terms that we use in those reports, it will be very helpful to outline the differences between the following, because I think often we use them interchangeably. EL, ELL, ESL, ESOL. People need to know what the differences between these four terms are, and some of them are interchangeable, but some are not. So if we could offer that clarification when you update that document, that would be helpful. My only comment, and I would like to have an answer this evening, is I believe this is goal 3. I'm a little confused by some information I see on page 12 and on page 15. Totally could be user error, so I'm looking for you to guide me a little bit. On page 12, it states that starting in FY20, FCPS attained its aspiration of 100% of pay scales to be within the 95 to 100%. I'm thinking this is from FY20 until now. That was the assumption that I had until I saw page 15 that says that Schedule H is below market. So how should I be utilizing the statement that is on page 12? Can somebody set some context for me there?
So on page 12, it's where are we in terms of fiscal year 22? And our understanding from the HR department was that all of our scales at that point in time were between 95 and 105%.
Just FY20 or FY20 moving forward? That's kind of how I read
moving
it.
forward. So this
Right.
is specific to FY22 in particular.
So
So
if it's
at the end of FY22 or during FY22, we were at market with all of our scales at that time.
I'm sorry, can you say that once more?
So during FY22, starting in FY20, so FY20, FY21, and FY22, all of our pay scales were at market, meaning they were between 95 and 105% at that point in time. I don't know whether Dr. Wilson can speak to the statement on slide 15 about where we are right now in terms of our market competitiveness.
So the data that I was provided indicated that 2021 benchmarking reflected the H schedule coming in just under the market goal of 94%. So at that time, there were 7 out of the 8 scales that were within market at the time of the study.
So then these are conflicting statements.
I would say that they are conflicting statements, and my apologies, and we'll look at both of the statements and come back for the work session with accurate statements.
Yes. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Mr. Frisch?
Thank you. This is one of the ones where we always get my least favorite survey result, which is, do you feel safe? Because it doesn't have any weight as far as I'm concerned, because it doesn't give people something to base that off of. It's a nice anecdote, I guess. But we do have a lot of things to be excited about when it comes to student safety, especially over the last few years. One thing addressed tonight was the money put into our security vestibules for the schools that did not have them. We have the security and safety audit that's ongoing. We are looking forward to a work session where we'll review curriculum around gun violence prevention and suicide prevention, and whether or not we are using best practices there. We're sending annual letters home to families to remind them of secure storage laws for firearms in homes. And when it comes to ed specs, the rules around the kind of construction that we do in our schools, future schools and renovation projects will have restrooms that are more accommodating of our trans and gender expansive kids and provide everyone more privacy. So we have a lot to be proud of in the work that our staff has done over the last few years to give us confidence in numbers that say people feel safe. And we have a long way to go, but I'm sure we can get there. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tolan?
Yes, thank you. A couple questions on goal 3. I was wondering too, we're now working on the FY24 budget. So I'm hoping for the work session we'll be able to have that, where we were in 22, what happened in 23, now we're moving into 24. And we know that our neighboring districts are also competing for the same people that we're competing for. So as we've been bringing our salaries up, we all have heard, certainly from, out in the schools, anecdotal stories of people leaving for, salaries in Loudoun County, Prince William County, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to throw out there too, since we are competing for these same people, is there any thought to do kind of a regional look at salaries so that we can be a little bit more collaborative on some of this?
Absolutely, that is definitely something that we're looking at. We did note that there were other school divisions, particularly our local districts, that they both modified pay structures and implemented significant MSAs in fiscal year 2022. So with that noted, that's something that we definitely want to look at more specifically.
Can you just tell us, we keep talking about Schedule H. Who is on Schedule H?
Food services, parent liaisons, and transportation.
Awesome, thank you. I also just want to throw out there, and I put a budget question in on potential changes to our retirement system so that we can retain people that are, at the point where they're ready to retire, but we would love to retain them for a couple of years. I know Mr. Smith and I had a little bit of a conversation about a program that we used to have, a work after retirement program. I would be really curious if that is something we could really look at to try to retain some of these highly experienced, incredible people that would like to stay for a little while, but financially it doesn't make sense the way we have things set up right now.
So what I can say to that, and we may not have information by the January 3rd work session, but the Board of Trustees with ERFC has asked the Executive Director to work with the actuary to provide some possible costing and what the implications of such a move would be. And once we get that information, we'll be able to share that with the board.
That would be great. Thank you. Mr. Fanshawe, could you give us a little bit more of a reminder on the safety audits and what the dates are for the progress on that?
Sure, happy to. The proposals have been received. The evaluation team has started reviewing the proposals we received, and that will continue through this month. In January, the interviews with the offers will take place, and we're looking to award by the 1st of February, with completion of the report by the end of May.
Thank you. Of course, the whole idea of aging trailers, as you know, is near and dear to my heart with the work that we're currently doing with Kent Gardens Elementary School. I would love by the work session at least, we're having these continuing conversations, and I've talked to a number of my board colleagues too, just about what's happening and what we're thinking about with Kent Gardens and the research that we need to do. But by the work session, I would love to have, and maybe you have this information now, the comment that there's no dedicated funding for the reduction of these trailers or these outside classrooms. Is it operational funding that you need, or is it capital funding?
That would be operational funding. When we look at capital funding, we look at using capital funding for new construction and also for our modulars, but for our learning cottages, trailers, however you want to call them, that would be operations money.
All right.
Thank
Okay,
you.
that's my time, right?
I think so. Well, look forward to more questions at the work session. Thank you. Ms. Marin, followed by Ms. Keys-Kamara. Thank you. Regarding the goal report around our facilities, I would love if during the CIP process, the capital improvement process, as well as the work session, that we could talk and hear more strategically about how to look at facilities. So, we have our capital improvement plan, and it's a multi-year plan, but can we really get specific about what actions the school division needs to take and how the board can help? So for instance, increasing the bond cap that our county currently has on our excellent bond rating to fund the renovations that are decades long in queue to get to construction in a more timely manner. Like, what would it actually look like for us to make that happen? Do we have to have a special working group? Do we have to have a special advocacy approach? Another area is using space more creatively and in conjunction with time. As someone mentioned that the building level administrator decides the use of this space. Well, we've got a whole range of discrepancies. We have one HVAC program in the entire school division. and that's in one location. Can we offer additional courses in that space so that it's doing double duty in a day? What about students taking buses? It was mentioned that, busing students is opposed, but we do it all the time, and the board has endorsed it for advanced academics, for world language instruction, and for that career development instruction. So how does the facilities plan really answer these questions? And so I'm not looking for the answers at our work session or even in the next capital improvement program, but like, what's the multi-year answer here? What's the plan that we can work for? And perhaps this is getting in too early to the strategic plan that I know, I'm trying to be patient as we figure out that vision, but I think that we can all agree that having our students travel on buses for hours a week is not optimal. And so what is the strategy to get away from that? What's the strategy for removing trailers? We know that they're not a favorite. They present security issues and others. What's the plan for that? And finally, something I've been thinking about asking a budget question, but I've decided not to because I really want to continue to focus on education as our mission. But I would love to know how much money the school division spends on trying to prevent gun violence. And that is not a criticism of anybody in the school division. It's a criticism of the rest of the policymakers that are not doing their job. That makes us try to do all these things, from curriculum to security fortifications to communications. But I think, we mentioned $5 million on security vestibules. I would love to know how much we spend on training, on security, on, hard facilities of what we spend that we could be spending instructing people if other parts of our community and policymakers pulled their weight to prevent gun violence. It feels like a very big burden that's on us. But I won't ask that question, Ms. Burden, but that's something I've been thinking about the last few weeks. So so something to think about, Dr. Reed, all these items as your team prepares to present the CIP and the strategic plan and the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Keys-Gamarra?
Yes, I appreciate this summary, and I have reviewed these documents. Dr. Reed, I want to go back to the strategic plan scorecard, which was a part of what was posted, and just mention a couple of things so that when you prepare for the work session, perhaps these things can be addressed. And I'm also specifically looking for some priorities. As you know, we've had some data collection ongoing. It may not line up specifically where our strategic plan will end up, but we do have this document, and I'm wondering if it can be a part of how we plan to move forward. So on the strategic plan scorecard, school year 2021, which was printed off for me, there are a few things that I would like for us to explore. In the second column, where it says, it starts with elimination of gaps, the second row, 3 down, percent of students participating in AAP grades 3 through 8. There are significant discrepancies there. Percent of AAP students demonstrating advanced performance in reading or mathematics, additional discrepancies. Percent of, just below that, advanced coursework, percent of students participating in Algebra 1 by 8th grade. In the next row, it talks a little bit about portrait of a graduate. I'm not sure whether we'll continue with that language, but the very last square in that row talks about percent of students who demonstrate proficiency in the portrait of graduate presentation of learning. And then the last one is undercaring culture, number of staff referrals for disruptive behavior per 100 students, which also shows some significant discrepancies. So I wanted to give you a heads up, also let the community know this was a part of this report, and if you can let us know how you might include that in your planning going forward, I would appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And seeing no other board member that wants to speak, I just will take a really brief turn. Most of my comments I will wait till the work session, but I just wanted to say, Dr. Wilson, I would love to see, I know we're having staffing challenges as all school systems, I think, are across the country, staffing in both teachers and administrators and staff. And one of the things I appreciate the comment about salaries in the Wavy Guide, but I'd love to dig a little more into what our surrounding jurisdictions are doing in terms of salary and benefits comparison for us. I know recently we've lost some of our very seasoned, wonderful principals to another surrounding jurisdiction. Many of them gone in there, so I'm just curious what they may be doing, compensation or benefits, to be attracted, or what the difference may be between us, and there may not be any difference. And same for things, just a little more detail in terms of compensation and benefits to see if are there areas where we could be more competitive, or maybe we are very competitive, and it's just something that we're all facing nationwide. So I just want to put that in your ear. That's something I may ask for more detail at the work session.
Thank you. We'll bring that to the table.
Ms. McLeod, we're not.
I wanted to ask if you could clarify your request to her, because you're asking on that salary and compensation, but one of the things that we're going to need is not just year by year, but total earnings.
I appreciate that, but as part of the salary and compensation benefits, it is the full compensation benefits in comparison, so we can see what we're offering versus what other jurisdictions are offering. Ms. McLaughlin, thank you. So, when we look at that, sort of just a little more data on what's going on in our surrounding jurisdictions versus here, so we understand, to get a good picture of what we're offering for our people, because we want to make sure that we're competitive, and I think we are, but it'd be good to sort of have some more information on that. So, having said that, we will move on to agenda item. There are no action items on today's agenda, so we'll move on to agenda item 5, consent agenda. Our adopted rules of parliamentary procedure, Robert's rules, provide for a consent agenda listing several items for approval of the board by a single motion. Many items listed have gone through board review, and documentation has been provided to all board members and the public in advance. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member prior to the meeting. The consent agenda items are on the screen. Is there any objection to approving the consent agenda? Seeing and hearing no objection, the consent agenda is approved. Agenda item 6, new business. The following are new business agenda items. There will not be a vote on these items this evening, but action is scheduled at a future meeting. The new business items are on the screen. Agenda item 7, board committee reports. Our next agenda item is board committee reports, and I call on Ms. McLaughlin for an update from the Public Engagement Committee.
Great. Yesterday, PEC held a meeting where we discussed procedures for how we want to handle student speakers as well as walk-in speakers at our regular business meeting. For student speakers, we drafted some language that will allow students to indicate if they wish to have their names read out loud and publicly displayed or not. For walk-in speakers, we discussed a new proposal that would extend the request time to speak. Right now, the cutoff time is before the start of the meeting, and so we would like to see if the board wants to give consideration that sometimes we don't know if the speakers are showing up and if those slots are going to be utilized or not, and so we'd like to extend that sign-up period, and so that up until if we know that people haven't showed, people can be added to the wait list, and it's not before the meeting or not at all. We also received an update from our Office of Communications and Community Relations on the school board members' newsletters and email distribution lists. And OCCR is working with IT to develop specific magisterial email distribution lists. So they're going to geo-fence. So whereas currently, and for many years, a family that lives in or attends a school that has like 4 different magisterial districts feeding into it, they might end up with 4 magisterial newsletters along with the 3 at-larges. And so the geofencing would really enable that. If a family lives in the Braddock District, they're just going to get their Braddock District school board members newsletter and the 3 at-large. They wouldn't end up getting the 3 other magisterial board members who, they don't live in that district, they just happen to be a shared school site. So we're going to continue to work with OCCR on that, but wanted to let you know that is the goal. Also looking at updating these lists, because it was discussed and discovered that it was only board members who won an election, were seated in January, were inheriting an existing list from the prior magisterial board member, and that doesn't really take into account that unless families know to opt in, which had not been our practice for some time, then we weren't automatically capturing families. So I won't go into a lot of detail, but I thought that was an important one for board members to know. And then we will continue next week having another public engagement committee meeting, just the way the calendar worked, and we will get an update on the communications and engagement plan and project management plans on the school year calendar and on the strategic plan development process. So that's it.
Great, thank you. Agenda item 8, board matters. Next on the agenda is board matters, and I call on Ms. Pekarsky.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay, I hope everyone had a nice Thanksgiving break. It's been a busy couple of weeks. We all had the opportunity to be together at VSBA and be with other board members around the state, which was a nice opportunity to talk to others and kind of see what was going on in other school districts. I've had some great visits since then. I was at Union Mill actually yesterday, where apparently it was a movement Wednesday, where they have these like alarms go off and everybody gets up and does movement, and I was like, am I going to be participating in this too? Because I don't know if I want to come in. No, but it was great. It was a lot of fun. We got to, I got to see 5th graders writing fraction stories and 6th graders working on Mayan books and talking about perspectives of literature. And I always love to ask the kids when I see that, do you like reading real books or do you like reading online? And it's amazing without fail. The majority of kids always tell me real books, which is just, to me, in line with the research. So anyway, I mentioned that. I had a great visit with the Cub Scouts of Pack 1601 about our job and what we do, and asked them about their wonderful ideas for our schools, and I left with a very long laundry list. So, and they all wanted to know what my email was so they could send me more ideas. So I thought that was wonderful. We had the opportunity, all of us, to go to the Board of Supervisors School Board Joint Budget Meeting, which is really kind of the first opportunity we have to work with our partners in the budgeting process. I also was able to go with a few of my colleagues and Dr. Reed to the World Day of Remembrance for Road Traffic Victims at Oakton High School, which was very moving and really highlighted how there is a lot for us that we still need to be doing to ensure that our roads are safe for all, especially when we have so many kids on them. I'm looking forward to many more visits in the next few weeks, so thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cohen?
Thanks very much. I agree. It was nice to have a little bit of a break for the Thanksgiving holiday, and in that time, the Cohen family had the very exciting news that we have a child who got into college. So, really big deal in our household for sure. Also, in the last few days, I've gotten to go to the Fairview High School Elementary School. They were that good. Chorus concert, and they were amazing, and some of like the most excited children I've ever seen. And the musical selections were just so amazing, and things I had never heard, things from every different culture and region and background, and just really, really cool. So I wanted to give a big shout out to Fairview and those kids, and especially child in the front row, whoever you were, who just kept letting your body get into it when you really were feeling it. I was right there with you. I also, as Ms. Togby mentioned, got to go to South County High School and show it off to Delegate Kathy Tran as one of the Take Your Legislators to School Month events. And we did have an exceptionally good time in the theater classroom with Ms. Rumberger, who had us participate in the warm-up activities. So I think maybe we all were bit by the acting bug. So, you know, any theater teachers out there, if you need our services, we would be happy to oblige. And then today I was fortunate, I think, with Ms. McLaughlin to be able to have attend a meeting with Supervisor Harity, Dave Jagels, who's one of our EPs, and Principals Cindy Conley from Irving and Mike Mukai from West Springfield High School, in really trying to deal with, and I know it's not unique to us here in our district, but helping kids find a place after middle school hours are done to go and have fun but make really good choices. And so it was just such an awesome opportunity to get to have, and Captain Ryan Morgan from the West Springfield Police Department. So to try to have everybody working together, and the shop owners as well, to really come together to try to come up with some good and creative solutions. And we look forward to working with our county partners to try to come up with some short-term and some long-term goals. And of course, I would be remiss to not put a plug in for middle school later start times, which, you know, would get the kids home a little closer to when their parents were coming home. So just a little more information. But it has been a great week, and we're looking forward to all of the amazing chorus, band, orchestra, everything that's coming up in the next few weeks.
Thank you. Mr. Frisch?
Thank you. I had an eventful couple weeks leading up to Thanksgiving. As folks will be saying on this panel, on this dais, most of us went to Williamsburg for the Virginia School Board Association Annual Conference. I had the opportunity to attend sessions about special education advisory committees and the upcoming state legislative session, among others. It was a lively conference, and it was great connecting with colleagues from around the Commonwealth. The school board also held its annual legislative briefing at Gatehouse, where we convened with Fairfax County's state and federal delegations to discuss our legislative priorities for the year ahead. We talked about this at a previous school board meeting, so I won't go into the details, but it was a good meeting. And finally, I had an opportunity to attend the World Remembrance Day at Oakton High School with several of my colleagues, hosted by Fairfax Families for Safe Streets. The superintendent was also there, honoring all the victims of traffic violence that we lost this year in the county, with 22 lit candles as a reminder of the folks we've lost in the county. It was a very special opportunity, and we have a lot of work to do, each of us in our own roles as community members, to help prevent these deaths from happening in the future. In other community news, the Oakton Pantry just celebrated its 6th anniversary. In honor of this anniversary and the outstanding commitment to our community, the Board of Supervisors recently presented them with a resolution of thanks. Just this past Thanksgiving, the Oakton Pantry provided more than 150 meals to families in need. And obviously, thank you to the Oakton Pantry for all that they've done. If you're able, please do donate and support their good work. Finally, on the subject of newsletters, this past week I put out a newsletter detailing so many of the amazing shows and winter concerts this month from our band, orchestra, choir, and drama students. After sending the newsletter, I guess you could say I had it coming. I had it coming. I only have myself to blame. I will be seeing the Falls Church High School production of Chicago on Sunday, and I hope that you will do the same. Thank you.
You know, that's actually one of my favorite shows, and right now, I don't know if I'm ever going to get that out of my head. So thank you, Carl, so much for all of that. I'm also going to be going to see Chicago at Falls Church, so I will see you there on Sunday. Just completed the 3 superintendent community conversations in the Mason District. I was just so glad to hear our community come out and to really articulate to Dr. Reed their concerns. And I think the theme of all 3 of my pyramids, Mason, Falls Church, and Annandale, were that they wanted to be provided with equitable access to academics, equitable facilities, and pretty much what everybody else around Fairfax County has, they wanted in our pyramids. Our families do not want to be left behind. So thank you for listening to all of what they've shared. I also had the opportunity to take my legislator to school. I had Senator David Marsden, who visited Annandale High School with me, and he was so engaging in teaching the history class about the Dillon Rule. And so students were fascinated by that, and they were also surprised by our lack of ability to do certain things because of the Dillon Rule. So I definitely enjoyed that. And I saw some fantastic things going on at the school that day. And the one that I really want to highlight, particularly as an educator, it spoke really very closely to my heart, where I saw English class after English class where teachers had students in small groups in the back or on the floor of a high school. That was just fantastic to see that kind of attention to the needs of students. That's a great opportunity and way to differentiate. I know we typically think of those strategies as those that belong only in elementary, and it was just so satisfying to see it at a secondary level. So yay you at Annandale High School. I also want to give a big shout out to Principal DeRose in terms of uplifting the facilities at Annandale High School so that it's bright and cheerful and it's a great place that kids can come and visit. It really has made quite a difference from what I've noticed from before he got there. And also a big shout out to the Second Chance breakfast that is provided at Annandale High School around 10:30 or so. They have various stations throughout the school where kids could just come, grab a bite, eat it between that 15-minute period between, I think, second and third periods. It's just a great way for our kids to get some nourishment so that they could be prepared for the rest of their day, particularly if they had missed the initial breakfast opportunity. I don't think I had a chance to talk about this, but a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to visit Wayanoke Elementary School with Dr. Reed, where Principal Usher took us through so many of her woodchucks, which I heard and understand now is a favorite animal of Dr. Reed. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Ms. McLaughlin?
Yeah, I did want to share with my colleagues that during the Williamsburg conference, I did speak to a couple of vendors who represent mid-size school divisions in the Mid-Atlantic, Virginia, and also like the Southeast. And I have shared with Dr. Reed that I know this board has a lot on its plate, but I'm increasingly concerned that prior boards invested a lot for us to get the salad bars and healthy food in schools, and the pandemic, I understand, set us back. But Dr. Reed, I think that the patience is running thin in our community. We can't use the pandemic as an excuse anymore. Our salad bars have got to be like a light switch, flip them on and get them working. And then I really would love, as part of our strategic plan, I mean, we know that healthy bodies, healthy minds. And with a poverty rate of over 30%, these kids are relying on healthy food. And I talk about focus groups. I want my colleagues to know, I think we might want to start some intentional dialogues in our town halls around food. It's just not good. The second thing I wanted to make sure was on everybody's radar, because I just learned about this. Apparently 20 or so of our 25 high schools are using the electronic e-hall pass software technology, where instead of students having the traditional paper hall pass they get from a teacher, it's a software that that it does a lot of monitoring and controlling, and there can be I guess, pros and cons to it. However, as I shared with one of my RASs, this was one of those things that happened before your arrival, Dr. Reed, so I'm not putting it on you, but I explained to a RAS, this should never come as a surprise to a board member. When you're talking about how we are monitoring and tracking student behavior, I mean, compulsory education means they have to go into that building. And so it came as a surprise. I had never heard of it. So board members, if you had heard about eHall Pass, I had not, but I don't expect to hear every, software technology we employ, but when you were going to do something that is this different, and one of my schools piloted and they chose not to do it. They didn't find that the teachers liked it, and so they chose not to. So they're one of the 5 out of the 25 high schools. So I just wanted to use that sort of as a example that, I'm not asking you to always have to mind read what the board wants to know, but that one, and I still question how come it's just left building by building to decide what's best.
Thank you. Ms. Tolan?
Ms. McLaughlin, I was just paging through one of the recent Highlander McLean magazine. There's an article from a student perspective on the eHall Pass, so it might be interesting for people to take a look at. I do want to just say, I'm so excited about all the hard work that is going on around the strategic plan. But if you haven't clicked on the FCPS This Week link to an elementary student's view of the strategic plan, you have to do it. It is just absolutely adorable. And the kids have some pretty incredible ideas. And I almost want to reach out to the little girl in there. I have been to an elementary school that has a slide instead of a staircase. So it is something that is done. So we were going to have to think about that one. I had a great meeting yesterday with my Drainsville PTA, PTO leaders. I do that in conjunction with the Safe Community Coalition. And I think I might have mentioned earlier, we had our manager of tutor.com come to speak to us about that resource. And I do encourage people to find out more about it and really think about encouraging students to use it. It is an incredible, incredible resource, and it is being sorely, from what I understand, underutilized at this point. Dr. Reed already mentioned our visit to McLean High School. We did go with Delegate Rip Sullivan, and certainly the highlight of that experience was talking to the Student Voices leadership and hearing about the amazing things that they're doing to really create solutions to problems and issues that they see at the school. And of course, I do have to mention again the Cooper Band that we heard from, but we saw some pretty amazing math going on at Cooper Middle School, including 6th graders that are coming to Cooper to learn some of that advanced mathematics. I was at Drainsville Elementary School for a family math day just before Thanksgiving, which was absolutely an incredible way to get parents engaged in seeing what their kids are doing with math. And Ms. McLaughlin, I had lunch in the lunchroom and thought so much about all our salad bars and how we really do need to take a really close look at that. I had a couple comments from parents about, wait a minute, this is what we're having for lunch? So I do think we need to take a look at that. I was able to attend a Herndon Opportunity Neighborhood meeting. I just want to give a shout out to that group. They also have a Reston group. These are community people that are just working so hard to give resources to all of our families and students across those geographic areas. I did attend the very moving World Remembrance Day also. I just have to give a shout out to the TJ satellite that just went up with the SpaceX launch. So a huge congratulations and kudos to our TJ students that have worked on that for years. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Amesh?
Happy to follow. Always delightful stories from Mrs. Tolan. I do want to thank you, Dr. Reed, and the full team for the community conversations that have been going on, and especially this week. I was really proud to join. FCPS has made history in the first visit ever to a mosque to meet folks where they're at, and I know that was after in the leadership of Dr. Brabrand having visited a synagogue a few years ago, and really just moving this division in a direction of intentional outreach that's meeting folks where they're at. So I thank you for that, and I look forward to continuing to build in that direction for all communities and groups. I also wanted to mention for our Sikh community, that's SIKH, it was Guru Nanak's birthday just this past week, a commemoration, of course, of their founder. And then on December 8th next week, Bodhi Day, so wishing everybody a blessed day of enlightenment in honoring the founder of Buddhism, which it's interesting to have both really be near each other, non-Abrahamic faiths, in the idea of enlightenment and renewal. So wishing everyone blessings, of course, in advance of the holiday season, which will commemorate many more that we can talk about next meeting. I do want to remind community members that the calendar survey and the family life education surveys both close tonight. So wanting to make sure, I don't know if anyone's even listening, but this is the chance. Right now you got 2 hours to fill out those surveys. Make sure you check your email if you're an FCPS parent. We also, I'm looking forward, of course, to the dinner with the city board next week. We just recently also spoke with the board of supervisors on the budget. There are a lot of important exchanges about what we're looking at ahead and wanting to try our best. I know our public citizen mentioned the steps today, but really trying to align with the county and having parity with our staff. And then, of course, plenty of other things coming up, the alignment team, the faith team, so many great things happening in FCPS, keeping us busy, apart from just our meetings and our work sessions. I certainly want to also just address one of our community members who mentioned the maternity leave question. I think that's certainly something we can take on. I'll be sure to mention it to Ms. Wilson, but I think that's potentially an area, especially in a female-dominated institution. I think that's something we can do better on. And then finally, I know many of our community members are hurting after the announcement of the findings of the Department of Education's investigation in special education. And looking into compensatory services. So I do want to just acknowledge that, recognize no doubt the pain. I know that many of my colleagues and I were advocating at the time for wanting to make sure that that was tended to, but no doubt we're going to continue to be diligent, and we're looking forward to robust work in the aftermath of the AIR report that's looking at special ed as a whole in our division to improve. So thank you all and good night.
Ms. Marin?
I think I've been reflective in the last few weeks about what's happening in our school division and making connections and seeing possibilities and sometimes feeling frustrations, both through my role as a school board member, through seeing school division practices, and then as a parent. So, special education, being a parent, going through the IEP process, talking about it at our ACSD work session, looking at the special audit report. I have a lot of reflections, questions, things I want to know more about. The statement from the Office of Civil Rights, that agreement, I would love us to be able to talk about that more, the implications of that, also what it says about the status of public education at this time as defined by the U.S. Department of Education. I think we have to really re-envision what we're doing. And while we are legally bound to provide education to students who need, by definition, or who are by definition special needs, I think all of our children, we talk about, by name and by need. We just need to redefine our system to do that more fully, and I'm really eager to do that work and serve all of our kids. I'm seeing, how executive functioning is being used in our schools, how kids are using Schoology or paper planner, planning out their work, and what it's like as a parent to try and understand those things, as well as like what source materials my students are using for their work. I did get to be at the Terracet Elementary Math Night last night for parents, where we got to the teachers, 2 fourth grade teachers, math specialists, advanced academics resource teacher, all stayed after late to play math games with parents in 4th grade who wanted to come. And I had done that years before at Wolf Trap Elementary, and it was really enlightening. And this is one of those things where I wonder, how many other schools do this, because it's so hands-on, and it was kind of like a math therapy group. Like parents, we had all these memories of when we learned math like this, and so it really it's powerful to incorporating our parents as partners. Ms. Bakarski and I got to talk about after-school activities with staff. I know that was mentioned earlier, but again, what do we do with the kids out of school time, which I, as a parent, am also, thinking about too. And my middle schooler is done at 2:15 p.m. But and also, career development work. Reducing barriers for instructors. When we talked about the legislative briefing, I'm excited that the bill draft deadline was 5 p.m. today, that our legislators had to pre-file to try and make laws. And so I think this board did a nice job of advocating to those lawmakers about reducing barriers to instruction, also getting more authority for things like speed controls, speeding zones to create better school environments. And the last thing I'll say is I am very grateful to the students at the Davis Career Center who furnished pies that I ordered and paid for my family for Thanksgiving. So we had apple crumble and pumpkin, and they were delicious, and I ordered way too many and ate way too much. But I thoroughly recommend their services, and yeah, it was a nice thing to bring into my home to connect with our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Keys-Kamara?
Thank you. I too enjoyed the VSBA convention very much. I thought the discussions were provoking and encouraged good discussion. I particularly enjoyed a presentation by the Arlington County School Board on SROs and how they created a community discussion about how to deal with that. It was really good work, and I look forward to us, hopefully, Dr. Reed being able to discuss that. I know that there's a forum topic that's been pending for some time, so I look forward to that. As the school board liaison to the foundation's Educate Fairfax, I encourage all of our staff members and board members to take note of the number of identified newcomer students in Fairfax County who are now supported by the FCPS Homeless Liaison Office. That number continues to grow. For many of these families, securing essential needs such as clothing, medicine, emergency food, etc., is a real struggle. So Educate Fairfax is once again holding their annual gift card drive to benefit the newcomer student population. Donated funds will be used to purchase gift cards from a variety of stores. Your donation can be made securely online, or checks can be mailed directly to Educate Fairfax. And the deadline is January 6, 2023. Let's see. I want to say that on December 12th, I look forward to hosting a virtual event with the Special Olympics and FCPS students to talk about Spread the Word and Inclusion Day. I also want to state that I had the pleasure of visiting Rolling Valley Elementary School in Rocky Run and enjoyed very much a discussion regarding how hard our staff members are working toward inclusion, but serving a diverse community there. And I think the last thing, I think that's it. So I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. All of my boys were home, and since I know there's probably very few people listening, I want to say happy birthday to my oldest son. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Janet Koufax?
Thank you. I too was pleased to attend the Virginia School Boards Association with several of my colleagues 2 weeks ago. As stated by many, this is always an excellent opportunity to learn best practices and meet with colleagues from around the state. I do want to thank our Northern Virginia delegation for meeting with us to discuss our board's priorities prior to their session beginning in January. It's always wonderful to talk and meet with our delegates and help them understand our needs as a school system. Prior to the Thanksgiving holiday, our board and staff met with the Board of Supervisors and their staffs to discuss the fiscal forecast for the upcoming year. Dr. Reed, as you all know, will present her budget to us right after the winter break, and this will be our official start of the budget dance, as I like to call it, which will end smoothly, I hope, in an upcoming, in the approved budget when that lands in May.
This week I had the opportunity to attend the strategic planning meeting as part of the core team with my colleague, Ms. Sizemore Heiser. As Dr. Reed mentioned, this was the first of several meetings, and there were indeed both challenging and energizing conversations at this core meeting. I was encouraged to see a wide range of diverse members on this team, and I look forward to several more meetings in the new year as we move forward with this very important mission. With the upcoming holidays, Ms. Cohen talked about this too. If you want to get into the spirit of the season, I encourage you to attend one of the amazing chorus, band, or orchestra concerts, and you will be so energized and happy that you did. And so with all that jazz that Mr. Frisch spoke of, I wanted to highlight that the National Touring Company of Chicago is currently starring 2 FCPS alumni in the leads. Logan Floyd, who attended Fairfax High School, and she plays Velma Kelly, and Katie Frieden, who is a Hayfield Secondary School graduate, plays Roxy Hart. And I had the privilege of going to see that with my daughter. My daughter is friends with one of the actresses, and over the Thanksgiving holiday, it was spectacular. If it comes back around, I encourage you to do it. I was truly Fairfax proud of these young, beautiful, talented actors. So it was exciting. So have a good night, everyone.
Very cool, and I know I'm the last one to speak between us and bed or late night snacks. I'm hungry. So I just want to say I really also appreciate being at the VSBA conference with my colleagues and the World Day of Remembrance, as well as the core planning team and the Annandale Community Conversation to really hear from our community. And I'm looking forward tomorrow to going to tour the Workforce Innovation and Skills Hub in Alexandria to see some great community organizations around helping build workforce supports for our families and for our young adults who leave our system, and to have hopefully a very robust conversation with Dr. Reed and Davis Center Principal Chad Clayton on transition. We had to reschedule our visit, but we're still going to have the conversation. I'm excited about that, and I am very sorry to miss Chicago at Falls Church this weekend because I will be traveling to see my own son's first college ensemble performance this weekend. So I'm excited to see that. I'm sorry to miss Chicago, but I cannot wait for all of the amazing band, orchestra, chorus, joint, separate concerts in the next week, because it is a phenomenal time of year, and they really put you in the mood for the holidays and just make you happy because the music they make and the dedication these students have is amazing. So with that, this meeting is adjourned.